It's time for Rise and Shine. Good morning, Africa, as we are together for the next 3 hours. My name is Asanda Beda. Thank you for joining us. Let's start off with our news, and we'll let you know what's coming up on the show. And the news at 6 o'clock Central African time is by Jolane Tulo Mwebe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Senegal's Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko says he is willing to take his party out of the government and return to the opposition if President Bassirou Diomaye Faye breaks from its vision. This is amid rumours of a power struggle between the two party colleagues. Tensions have been high in the West African country following violence at universities and long drawn-out talks with the International Monetary Fund. Elizabeth Mapari reports.
Senegal is battling to raise cash and negotiate a new lending program with the IMF. The fund froze a $1.8 billion program in 2024 after Sonko's government uncovered misreported debts by the previous administration. Sonko was barred from running in the 2024 presidential election due to a legal conviction and chose little-known Faye as his replacement candidate, who appointed Sonko as prime minister.
Reports from Sudan say the army has foiled a drone attack on the city of Al Obeid, the capital of North Kordofan state. Air defences intercepted the drone before it could launch a missile strike. The latest incident comes just days after 9 people were killed and several others injured in drone attacks that destroyed warehouses and an oil production facility. The BBC's Richard Cargo has the details.
Monday's drone strike marks a sharp escalation of violence in El Obeid, a city the paramilitary rapid support forces have been trying to encircle. The RSF, locked in a 3-year power struggle with the army, has stepped up aerial assaults in recent weeks, hitting civilian infrastructure. On Saturday, 9 people were killed when a drone struck the city's main market as residents inspected damage from an earlier attack. Both sides are increasingly relying on drones as fighting intensifies in the wider Kordofan region, where the UN says more than 100,000 people have been displaced in just 3 months.
A legal opinion from Parliament's Legal Services in South Africa unit indicates that private investigator Paul O'Sullivan has flouted both the rules of Parliament as well as the terms of reference of the ad hoc committee. The South African Parliament Legal Service Unit says it has already informed private investigator Paul O'Sullivan to return to the ad hoc committee looking into concerns around national security. Last week, O'Sullivan left committee members stunned when he walked out of the proceedings, saying he was rushing to catch a flight. One of the Legal Services Unit's advisor at Parliament, Telena Harley-Starkey, elaborates.
In leaving the proceedings prematurely, Mr. O'Sullivan's actions may reasonably be construed as interfering with or impeding the committee in the execution of its mandate. Honourable members, the committee's terms of reference require it to assess the veracity of allegations advanced by various witnesses, including that of Mr. O'Sullivan, whose evidence was material, particularly in relation to allegations of political interference in police operations. His departure before completing his examination therefore hampered the committee's ability to discharge of its functions in terms of the terms of reference.
Civil society group South African Women in Dialogue SAWD says women should always remember the power of the country's constitution and its protection of equality. This was revealed during the launch of the national 30-year anniversary of the constitution's signing into law and the start of Human Rights Month. The event was held at the Apartheid Museum in Johannesburg. SAWD chairperson Togo Mpumlwana urged women to celebrate changes that the constitution has brought.
I'll just run quickly through some of the clauses of the Constitution. Section 9 is our equality clause that says there shall be no discrimination on the grounds of sex, gender, pregnancy, and marital status. Today, there are people who have forgotten that there was actually discrimination on sex, on gender, on pregnancy.
And finally, a Royal Air Force base in Cyprus has been targeted in a suspected drone strike amid a fresh conflict in the Middle East that happened shortly after British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said American forces could use British bases for what he called defensive strikes on Iranian missile sites. The BBC's Liz Doucette reports that it's not surprising that Starmer made that decision.
Britain, France, Germany cannot afford to be seen to be standing idly by, as their absolutely close allies in the Middle East are under attack. What Britain does now will be remembered in a confrontation like this. And so too on Iran's side. Iran also has its very close friends, and one of its most important partnerships in the region with Hezbollah of Lebanon. There's a new front that has been opened up there as well. And it is only the beginning of day 3.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Cholani Tulo Wepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In our sports headlines, Standard Bank sponsorship brings huge relief to SAFA national teams. And Tennis Australia and ANZ have extended their long-standing partnership. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa. From Africa's broadcast capital to the furthest corners of the globe, this is Rise and Shine. Every weekday mornings on Channel Africa.
It is time to rise and shine with us, Africa, and thank you for choosing us to wake up with. We are Channel Africa, broadcasting live from South Africa in Johannesburg. My name is Asanda Beda. I'd be riding solo on this Tuesday. It is the 3rd of March, and of course, stay connected to Africa and the world with Channel Africa, the international voice of the South African Broadcasting Corporation. You can watch or listen anytime, anywhere at channelafrica.co.za. That's our website, on the Channel Africa mobile app, and on SABC Plus, or via the DSTV and OpenView audio bouquets. You can also catch us on social media at Channel Africa 1 is our handle, and we are on Facebook, and then on other platforms as well. Channel Africa is first with the African story globally. And some of those stories we'll be touching on. We go to Kenya, where there's been a plane crash, killing 6, including a member of parliament and the pilot of that crash. The cause of that crash not yet known, and also the names of the other members who've lost their lives have also not yet been released. So a developing story and a sad one there. And also 4,000 Burundians are said to have left Tanzania, where they have lived as refugees in camps there for some years. They're now returning to Burundi, and a process that is voluntary as a repatriation one, and spearheaded by the United Nations. And they're reiterating, the United Nations, that they want this process to be voluntary, to be safe, and to also make sure that the dignity of Burundians is upheld. Some are still left in Burundi. We're not sure when they will be leaving, if they want to leave, because, as we say, the United Nations has reiterated that this process must be a voluntary one. Those stories and more, of course, coming up as we say we are together for the next 3 hours, bringing you news and current affairs.
Darubini ya Afrika na I am Henry Shakif.
Kiongozi wa chama kikuu cha upinzani nchini Tanzania Tundu Lissu anayekabiliwa na kesi ya uhaini anasema hajala chakula licha ya kesi inayomkabili awali kuahirishwa. Pengine haya malalamiko yana mashiko ya namna yoyote?
Kama yana mashiko ama hayana ni jambo tofauti, kwa sababu yeye muda uliotolewa mchana ni kwa ajili ya kwenda kula. Nakumbuka kwamba Lissu ni mahabusu, sio mfungwa. Japokuwa sijajua taratibu za magereza zinakuaje wanapokuwa na wafungwa na mahabusu, lakini mahabusu wanapelekwa chakula na ndugu zao kutoka nje.
Na kama tunavyofahamu kesi hii ikiwa inaendelea, imeelezwa kwamba itakuwa inaendelea kusikilizwa mfululizo ili kuweza kuendelea na kuweza kuimaliza kwa haraka. Yeye mwenyewe ndio ambaye anajitetea Tundu Lissu. Pengine wana namna ya wao kutaka kuleta hukumu ya haraka, au haya ni maelezo ya awali?
Hapana, ni kesi inaendelea na wanashikiliwa mashahidi. Kwa hiyo lazima itapelekwa haraka, kwa sababu pia limekuwa ni ombi la mshtakiwa mwenyewe anayejitetea Tundu Lissu.
Darubini ya Afrika kila Jumatatu hadi Ijumaa kuanzia saa 11 kamili hadi saa 12 kamili jioni majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
So after the 6 a.m. news on Rise and Shine, we bring you a segment of our show that we call the Africa Roundup. It's a list of stories happening in and around our continent. You may have missed some, you may have heard others, and you just may be looking for a different angle from the African perspective. And this news or list of news is compiled by our team of reporters, our researchers and editors to make sure that you get into the know and get updated. It also can serve as a throw forward to what one can expect to develop in this new day as we start off with the news. And today we start in the U.S., where the president there, President Donald Trump, says he ordered strikes on Iran to prevent what he called an imminent threat from its nuclear and ballistic missile programs. Speaking on Monday, he vowed to pursue the campaign for as long as necessary, though he offered no evidence to support the claim that the danger was immediate.
Today, the United States military continues to carry out large-scale combat operations in Iran to eliminate the grave threats posed to America by this terrible terrorist regime. Our objectives are clear. First, we're destroying Iran's missile capabilities, and you see that happening on an hourly basis, and their capacity to produce brand new ones, and pretty good ones they make. Second, we're annihilating their navy. We've knocked out already 10 ships. They're at the bottom of the sea. Third, we're ensuring that the world's #1 sponsor of terror can never obtain a nuclear weapon. Never going to have a nuclear weapon. I said that from the beginning. They're never going to have a nuclear weapon. They were on the road to getting one legitimately through a deal that was signed foolishly by our country. And finally, we're ensuring that the Iranian regime cannot continue to arm, fund, and direct terrorist armies outside of their borders. And we thought we had a deal, but then they backed out. And they came back, and we thought we had a deal, and they backed out. I said, you can't deal with these people. You got to do it the right way. And we will easily prevail. We're already substantially ahead of our time projections, but whatever the time is, it's okay. Whatever it takes, we will always, and we have right from the beginning, we projected 4 to 5 weeks, but we have capability to go far longer than that. We'll do it.
On to Saudi Arabia now. The country has shut its largest domestic oil refinery after a drone strike, according to a source. The disruption comes as Israeli and U.S. strikes and Iranian retaliation force shutdowns of oil and gas facilities across the Middle East, with Egypt affected by fuel and gas supply disruptions that have led to temporary power rationing. Fiona Jones has more.
Saudi Arabia shut its biggest domestic oil refinery on Monday after a drone strike, a source said. Qatar halted production of liquefied natural gas, while its government said an energy facility was attacked by 2 Iranian drones. Meanwhile, Iraqi Kurdistan suspended most oil production and several major Israeli gas fields shut, throttling exports to Egypt. It's prompted concerns about supply disruptions, sending oil prices surging around 13% on Monday, the highest since January 2025. At state oil giant Saudi Aramco's refinery, the source said, the situation was under control, with debris from 2 intercepted drones causing a limited fire. The now shut Ras Tanura facility produces 550,000 barrels per day and is part of an energy complex which also serves as a critical export terminal for Saudi crude oil. The shutdown will likely add to supply anxieties. That's after shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, through which around a fifth of global oil consumption flows, is at a near halt following Sunday attacks on vessels.
Africa Week has opened at King's College London, bringing together voices from Africa and beyond. Hosted by the African Leadership Centre, the programme highlights research and debate on African issues. Medain Detese, co-convener of the Centre's flagship Africa Public Square debates, tells us more.
I think this one is important. It's about African agency, and for several reasons. One is that, African agency has always been a slogan, not a strategy. Africa did not have the strategy, to engage and harness and sustain and renew its agency. It's important because at this moment in time, there is this global disorder and, geopolitical chaos. In such kind of geopolitical chaos, you need some political deterrence. You need a negotiating power. You need strategies of alliance building. You need leadership, to meet up to the new challenges and, strategize coherently, decisively.
A new documentary shines a light on the Nigerian mothers of the Chibok girls. A decade on from the abduction of 276 schoolgirls by Boko Haram, it tells the story of the women left behind, highlighting their strength and determination in a tragedy that captured the world's attention.
We Chibok people must be charismatic in our lives. We accept whatever happens, the sweet and the sour. We deal with the situations we find ourselves in. We agree what will happen among us. This is how we got strength to continue all those things that we are doing for the progress of our life.
Making a film like this is tough because you're constantly confronted with the grief. You're confronted with, there are certain aspects of their lives that, just really breaks you. But you power through it, you push through it, because you can see that the women are also pushing through it. They find moments of laughter, they find moments of joy, and they enjoy it. They love their kids, and they enjoy family, and all of that. So it inspires you to be like, you know what, I can't be crying more than the bereaved.
In Lesotho, the Entrepreneurship Hub, together with the Ministry of Trade, the European Union and the Lesotho National Development Centre, is hosting a market display where small businesses are showcasing their products. The initiative seeks to help women entrepreneurs expand their reach by connecting them with major retailers. Rapelang Hadebe reports.
It is termed a B2B matchmaking. This is why the government is trying to link big business with small entrepreneurs in an effort to boost regional value chains.
And basically this says they want to make sure that the big shops in the country, your ShopRite, your Pick and Pay, your Game, your Clicks, and many others, they should be able to absorb them, because most of the time you'll find that these big shops, they use products from outside the country. And what does this say? It says we're not focusing on our local products, hence we are not building the local economy.
It is platforms such as this one where potential buyers are able to touch and feel products that are market ready.
And that's how we come to the end of today's edition of the Africa Roundup. This comes after the 6 a.m. news on Rise and Shine, so we'll do this again tomorrow. Coming up, we zoom into the East African region of our continent, looking at stories making headlines there. Some we may have touched on the Africa Roundup, others may be coming to you for the first time. We get into discussion on that, as we always do, on a Tuesday with Dennis Mberu. Stay tuned.
Stella Longwe
pamalonje.
Ndiyetu apa tindikatswiri oyimba wa dziko la Mozambique ameneyu amene ali Rikabana. Ndatiuzeni kuti mayimba chamba chanji komanso dzina lanu lenileni kuoneka ngati dzina limeneli ndilijatu atapa stage. Dzina lanu kwenikweni ndi ndani komanso mayimba chamba chanji?
Ineyo dzina langa lenileni ndine Ricardo Musa Rabana. Chamba chimene ndimayimba ine ndi manganji ndimakonda kwambiri ma tradition. Zimenezo ndi nyimbo zathu chifukwa kwathu kunoko tili ndi madansi osiyanasiyana a chimizi. Ndi ineyo poti ndi mnyamata wa chimizi ndi ndimakondanso nyimbo za chimizi.
Ndinu a chimizi? Ndi makondanso nyimbo za chimizi, mapanganso za chimizi. Zosangalatsa kuti mwanena poyera kuti ndinu a chimizi. Anthu amazibisa, anthu amafuna kukhala ndithu a chitauni. Koma chikhalidwetu chilibe chitauni, aliyense ndi chikhalidwe chake, aliyense ndi zimene amakonda.
Malonje pa nthawi ya 6 koloko kufikira 7 koloko madzulo. Lowiruka ndi Stella Longwe.
Your life, your rhythm, your Africa. Channel Africa. Find it for free on Google Play and the Apple App Store.
We take a look now at some stories making headlines in and around the East African region of our continent. And as always on a Tuesday, we say good morning to Dennis Peru, journalist and team leader at Grassroots Journalism Kenya. How are you on this particular Tuesday, Dennis?
Good morning, Asanda. I am fine. I hope you are fine as well.
Well, thank you very much. We start with your home country, a tragic one coming from there today in our East Africa rep. There was a helicopter crash on Saturday. It killed 6 people, among them the pilot as well as a member of parliament. The President William Ruto having sent his condolences to those who lost their lives and has named who the member of parliament is. But we understand that the others are not known, the other victims of this crash. What do we know about the cause at this stage?
Thank you so much, Asanda. And the tragic, incident that happened on Saturday that killed the member of parliament for the Emurua decree, Joanna Ngonga Angeno, and 5 others. And the cause of the crash is said to be caused by bad weather. Remember, Asanda, there's a lot of rain in Kenya currently, and it is said that the pilot lacked visibility in Nandi forest, and that led to the helicopter crashing and killing the 6 occupants on the spot. It is also alleged that there were some issues with the helicopter because the pilot tried to do emergency landing, but he was unable to do that, and that led to the crash. But as of now, we have managed to get the names of the other 5 occupants. Of course, the pilot is among those who perished. We also have a teacher by the name Carlos Keter. He's a photographer. Nixon Correa also died on the spot. The names of the other 2 occupants are yet to be identified.
In terms of the other, you say the other people are still yet to be identified. But in terms of safety and airline safety in Kenya, has that been under the spotlight? Is that something that could be deemed as a challenge in the country?
Of course, yes, Asanda. This is not the first time we are having aviation-related incidences. I remember last year we had a chopper crashing in a part of Kwale, that is the coastal region of Kenya. And we have had quite a number of incidences when it comes to aerial accidents. And remember, Asanda, this is not the first time we are losing a member of parliament in plane crashes or helicopter crashes some years back. We lost up to a 9 member of our parliaments who are traveling in an aeroplane in the northern part of Kenya. And it is sad that the region where the member of parliament comes from, we have lost two member of parliaments in a similar aviation or plane crashes recently. But we are yet to receive any information from Kenya Aviation Authority in regards to what happened to the helicopter, and analysis is going on and investigations are underway to actually tell Kenyans what really caused these helicopter to crash.
Yeah. Let's go to Burundi now. 4,000 Burundians have left Tanzania, where they were refugees. They're returning to their home country. And the UN is the one that is spearheading this repatriation. They're calling it a voluntary repatriation, stressing that it is important that the Burundians who do decide to go back home to Burundi do so voluntarily, but that also the movement of Burundians is one that is safe and one where the dignity of Burundians is upheld. So those Burundians who are still left in Tanzania, what is the humanitarian situation like there?
Yes, Sandra, remember this is a voluntary repatriation that is being organized by the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, the UNHCR. And the returnees have been living in refugee camps in Tanzania after fleeing political instability and security in Burundi in previous years. And according to the UNHCR, they said the operation was conducted in coordination with the government of both countries to ensure that the returnee or the returns were voluntary, safe, and dignified. The officials said the repatriation forms part of the ongoing effort to support durable solution for the displaced Burundians, many of whom have spent years in exile. Reception arrangements have been put in place to assist the returnees with the documentation, basic supplies, and reintegration support upon arrival. And this is just a fraction of the Burundians refugees are living in Tanzania. And according to the UNHCR, there are still quite a number of Burundi refugees who are still in Tanzania, and they feel that it is not yet time to return to their home country. And despite the returns, of course, thousands of Burundians, they are still in Tanzanian camps and their neighboring states. And the humanitarian agencies continue to monitor the conditions inside Burundi to assess whether the circumstances are conducive for further voluntary repatriation. So, Asanda, we are looking to see whether the UNHCR will be able to convince, after doing the assessment, convince other refugees from Tanzania to repatriate back to their country. And UNHCR has reinstated the returns must be based on an informed choice with the guarantee of safety and access to the basics services for those not opting to go back, or for those opting to go back to their country, Burundi.
All right, and then lastly, and briefly, we've just got a minute on this one. Malawi has decided to drop charges against the corruption charges against some top officials. They're implicated is a Reserve Bank governor, his deputy, a minister of finance, and even a secretary of treasury. Why are these charges being dropped of corruption against these very top positioned people? It's about 10 of them.
Yes, after Madanga was reinstated as the Deputy Governor of Reserve Bank, and Cliff Chiunda confirmed as the Secretary of the Treasury. And of course, this comes as Peter Mutharika, now the president of the party Democratic Progressive Party, DPP, won Malawi's September 2025 general election, defeating the incumbent Lazarus Chakwera of the MCP. Mutharika returned to presidency, ended the 5-year of MCP rule, under which most of the criminal proceedings had been filed and prosecuted. And Asanda, this is worrying because the named individuals were facing charges of corruption and misuse of office. And we are not yet clear because when the DPP cleared the cases, there are a lot of conversation. And yesterday, when I was going through the X conversation, there were a lot of conversation. When the president promised, the Malawians that he will be fighting corruption, we are now seeing the clearance and the cases are coming to an end without a clear conversation, or rather
It's quite concerning
indication
there,
of what.
Dennis. We're going to have to leave it there. Unfortunately, we're completely out of time. We'll continue maybe some of these topics later in the week in more detail, and we'll catch up with you again on Tuesday.
Thank you so much, Asanda.
Thank you. That's Dennis Peru, journalist and team leader at Grassroots Journalism Kenya, giving us our East Africa wrap. Let's get our news headlines. Here's Jwalani Tulongwepe.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Asanda. Good morning. Making headlines, the United States has announced its sanctioning of the Rwandan Defense Force and 4 senior RDF officers for their direct operational support of the M23 rebel movement and its affiliates operating in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Senegal's Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko says he is willing to take his party out of the government and return to the opposition if President Bassirou Diomaye Faye breaks from its vision. This is amid rumours of a power struggle between the two-party colleagues. And finally, attacks on shipping and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz have sparked sharp rises in the prices of oil and gas. I will have details on these and other stories at 7 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
It's time now for our sports update. Let's say good morning to Fikile Lingwati for that.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good morning, Asanda. We begin with football news. The head coach of South Africa's national under-20 men's football team, Raymond Mdaga, has expressed his disappointment that some provinces and regions have reacted slowly to his plan of selecting a team to reach the FIFA Under-20 World Cup in Azerbaijan and Uzbekistan next year. A few weeks ago, Mdaga and the South African Football Association Technical Department released a circular asking regions and provinces to prepare for their scouting process to start selecting and monitoring for the new Amajita team. Mdaga says during the monitoring session at the Gauteng Development League's Top 8 tournament finals this weekend, things could have been better.
The circulars to all the provinces somewhere around end of November last year to say we would request them just to go around their LFAs, their regions, and when they do the provincial, we'll go down with the technical team to go and be able to check so that we are able to cover the whole country, much as it's not simple. Because if we go according to standard, the levels, you'll always go to DG, to DDC, you'll always go to the PSL, and so something that we're not looking into, want to look into everybody. But our worry so far is a lot of provinces haven't responded on that, and that's a worrying factor.
cricket news. Cricket South Africa, CSA, has named the South Africa's under-19 women's that is set to participate in the Nigeria Cricket Federation NCF Women's T20 International Invitational Tournament in Lagos from the 18th to the 29th of March. As part of the preparations for the ICC Women's Under-20 T20 World Cup in Bangladesh and Nepal in January next year, the South African under-19 women will face senior national sides Rwanda, Ghana, Sierra Leone, and host Nigeria in a league phase format. And finally, motor racing. Australian Grand Prix organizers say they are really confident the travel chaos caused by the ongoing conflict in the Middle East will not impact the opening race of the Formula One season this weekend. Close to 1,000 members of staff have been forced to rearrange flights, with an estimated 500 of them reportedly set to be flown from Europe on charter planes. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fidel Ngwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Across Africa, communities rise with the promise of clean water and clean sanitation. The African Union's 2026 theme calls us to action.
It's about mobilizing real commitments, securing climate-resilient water and sanitation projects, and ensuring that water becomes a driver of sustainable development and prosperity across the continent.
A landmark moment, not only for Africa, but for the global movement for access to safe water for all.
Assuring sustainable water availability for every home, every village, every nation. This is the Africa we want.
Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Hi there. Do you want to elevate your business and give it a voice in South Africa and Africa as a whole? Well, in that case, let Channel Africa make this a possibility. Channel Africa is willing to advertise your business for as little as 30,000 rands or $1,719.18. To get access to these great rates, send all requests to mukwenata@SABC. That's MOKOENATA@SABC. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Let's now catch you up with what's happening in the world of business. And here is Thabiso Lehuku to update us for the first time on this Tuesday morning.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and good morning. Egypt's central bank data shows that net foreign assets in the country rose by $4.2 billion in January to an all-time high of $29.54 billion as Gulf investments, a 2024 currency devaluation and strong remittances continued to bring in dollars. Remittances from workers abroad rose to record $4.0 billion in December, bringing total remittances of all 2025 to $41.5 billion, up from $29.6 billion in 2024. South African Parliament's chairperson of the Standing Committee on Finance, Dr. Joe Mashwanganyi, says it is inevitable that the war in the Middle East, sparked by the US and Israel against Iraq, will affect the country's finances. The chairpersons representing the finance cluster addressed the media and stakeholders in Parliament earlier today on matters around the budget. Before going into issues of the budget, Mashwanganyi addressed the possible impact that the latest global conflict will have on South Africa.
This conflict is going to have serious impact on our budget that has been tabled last week. Today we live in the global village. We can't be here and say we are not worried about what's happening there. We are very worried because it has got a direct impact on our economy and the countries that we trade with.
Meanwhile, South Africans should brace themselves to expect more at the pump this month as prices are set to increase from Wednesday amid rising geopolitical tensions in the Middle East. The Department of Mineral and Petroleum Resources has announced that the price of both grades of petrol is set to increase by 20 South African cents per litre, while the price of diesel is expected to increase by between 62 and 65 cents per litre, depending on the grade. The retail price of illuminating paraffin is set to increase by 58 cents and LP gas by 23 cents per kilogram. The department's Robert Maki explains.
The reason for this adjustment are the higher Brent crude oil prices on average due to tension between USA and Iran during the period under review. The average international product prices followed the increasing trend of the oil prices. The rand continued to strengthen against the US dollar and cushioned the fuel prices by close to 20 cents per litre. The slate levy remains unchanged at 0 cents per litre in the price structures of both petrol and diesel.
The South African Minister of Agriculture, John Steenhuisen, says that the department has received 1.5 million vaccines from Turkey, which will help intensify the rollout vaccination for foot and mouth disease. This comes after the arrival of 1 million doses from Argentina. Steenhuisen, the Free State MEC for Agriculture as well, Elsabe Rockman, engaged with various farming stakeholders on the nationwide mass vaccination rollout campaign against foot and mouth. Steenhuisen says he's confident that 80% of the national herd will be vaccinated by the end of the year. Apple has launched iPhone 17e, which is a smartphone model that starts at a price of $599 with 256 gigabytes of storage. The company looks to defend its share in a fiercely competitive global handset market. The move comes as memory chip prices climb amid a global shortage, suggesting Apple is willing to absorb some component cost pressure to make its lowest priced model more compelling. By offering higher storage at the same price point, Apple is positioning the 17e as a stronger value option as it looks to attract new users and defend market share against rivals facing tighter supply constraints. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 361. In Botswana, it's at 13.2. Kenya, 128 shillings 64. And Zambia, 18 kwacha 83. The BRICS countries in Brazil, the dollar there will cost you 5 real 12. Russia, 77 rubles 280. India, 91 rupees 5. China, 61 86. And in South Africa, the dollar will cost you 15 rand 92 cents. 74 pence to the British pound and 84 to the euro. Gold $5,395, platinum $2,366 per ounce. Brent crude oil is at $79.14 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tabisolo Huku.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine. Weekdays 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa.
Legal experts believe the latest budget allocation directed to the South Africa's Border Management Authority, or BMA, will give rise to an increase in already ongoing compliance inspections by the relevant enforcement departments in order to address illegal immigration and the employment of illegal foreign nationals in South Africa. In this year's budget speech, the country's finance minister, Enoch Godongwana, announced over $61 million will be allocated to BMA over the medium term to build capacity by filling 738 positions. Tutongobeni has more on this story.
The latest budget allocation of over $61 million directed to South Africa's Border Management Authority, BMA, is expected to give rise to an increase in already ongoing compliance inspections by the country's Department of Home Affairs, Department of Employment and Labour, and the South African Police Services. The funds to be allocated to BMA over the medium term are meant to build capacity by filling over 700 positions, which will address illegal immigration and the employment of illegal foreigners in South Africa. Taryn York, a senior associate in employment law at Cliff Decker Hofmeyer, says this budget will play a role in increasing much-needed capacity at BMA.
As a starting point, the Border Management Authority is a public entity and law enforcement service which was specifically established in order to manage immigration and border security. In the recent budget speech, the Finance Minister announced that the Border Management Authority has been allocated an amount of 990 million rand over the medium term. This budget allocation will increase capacity at the Border Management Authority by specifically filling 738 positions in order to address staff shortages which have previously affected operations at key ports of entry. It will also assist in addressing illegal immigration and improve border management. The additional capacity will also support compliance inspections and joint operations that are generally conducted by the Department of Home Affairs, the Department of Employment and Labour, and the South African Police Service.
York says the recent key changes in immigration law and digital advancements will be key in ensuring safe and secure government services, while at the same time boosting the country's tourism.
Some of the recent digital advancements by the Department of Home Affairs include the rolling out of the electronic travel authorization to all countries that require a visa. The ETA enables visa applications for tourists to be processed digitally within a period of 24 hours. You also have the use of drones and other technology along the country's borders aimed at strengthening border security. Another digital advancement includes the upcoming launch of the National Digital ID system, which aims to enable safe, secure, and remote access to government services. And another digital advancement relates to the Department of Home Affairs' invitation for South Africa's tourism and event sectors to apply to participate in the new Meets Visa scheme. Now, this scheme has been implemented in order to boost tourism in South Africa by reducing visa requirements and processing times within the sector.
She has advised employers of foreign nationals to constantly monitor the employees' documents to avoid being in breach of the law, which could result in a fine or worse, deportation of the employee.
Employees and foreign nationals found to be in breach of South Africa's immigration laws face the imposition of fines and imprisonment. And in relation to the illegal foreigners themselves, there is the risk of deportation as well. Now, to guard against this, employers and their foreign national employees should always monitor any immigration developments in order to assess the impact of these developments on them. Additionally, employers should comply with their general obligations in terms of the Immigration Act and ensure that any foreign national employee is only employed on a valid visa and on the specific terms and conditions that have been imposed in their visas.
For Channel Africa News, I am Tutongo Beni in Johannesburg.
Coming up on Rise and Shine, we talk about the United States having imposed sanctions on the Rwanda Defense Force, and they are accusing them of supporting the M23 rebel group in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, even though there has been no supporting evidence of this. But we'll be discussing that and understanding the implications thereof with Rwandan political analysts. Stay tuned.
Darubini ya Afrika na I am Henry Shakif.
Kiongozi wa chama kikuu cha upinzani nchini Tanzania Tundu Lissu anayekabiliwa na kesi ya uhaini anasema hajala chakula licha ya kesi inayomkabili awali kuahirishwa. Pengine haya malalamiko yana mashiko ya namna yoyote?
Kama yana mashiko ama hayana ni jambo tofauti, kwa sababu yeye muda uliotolewa mchana ni kwa ajili ya kwenda kula. Nakumbuka kwamba Lissu ni mahabusu, sio mfungwa. Japokuwa sijajua taratibu za magereza kueleza zinakuwaje wanapokuwa na wafungwa na mahabusu, lakini mahabusu wanapelekwa chakula na ndugu zao kutoka nje.
Na kama tunavyofahamu, kesi hii ikiwa inaendelea, imeelezwa kwamba itakuwa inaendelea kusikilizwa mfululizo ili kuweza kuendelea na kuweza kuimaliza kwa haraka. Yeye mwenyewe ndio ambaye anajitetea, Tundu Lissu. Pengine wana namna ya wao kutaka kuleta hukumu ya haraka, au haya ni maelezo ya awali?
Hapana, ni kesi inaendelea na wanashikiliwa mashahidi. Kwa hiyo lazima itapelekwa haraka, kwa sababu pia limekuwa ni ombi la mshtakiwa mwenyewe anayejitetea, Tundu Lissu.
Darubini ya Afrika kila Jumatatu hadi Ijumaa kuanzia saa 11 kamili hadi saa 12 kamili jioni majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
The United States has imposed sanctions on the Rwanda Defense Force and 4 of its top officials, accusing them of supporting the M23 rebel group in Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo. Rwanda has repeatedly denied providing support to M23. The move comes amid concerns over human rights abuses, mass displacement, and the risk of a wider regional conflict. To help us understand the implications of this, we're joined by Rwandan political analyst Gonzaga Muganwa. Gonzaga, thank you for joining us. Good morning.
Good morning to you. Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. The U.S. says that the Rwanda Defense Force has been actively supporting the M23 rebels in the Democratic Republic of Congo, even after the Washington Accords were signed. Why do you think the sanctions are coming now, and what message is Washington trying to put through here?
The sanctions are coming now because the United States is very keen on securing mineral concessions in the DRC, and the only way of getting them, because not many American companies are very keen, is to have a ceasefire and a sustainable peace deal. So they are trying to pressure Rwanda because the Congolese government has been lobbying very hard in Washington. Also, the Rwandans have also been lobbying very hard. Recently, there was a story that the sanctions could be delayed in one of the American newspapers, but it seems the Americans have decided to act now so that they can force Rwanda's hand, because the position of the Congolese government is that I believe if they force the Rwandan troops to withdraw, especially to withdraw their jamming and anti-aircraft technology, the Congolese army will be able to defeat the M23. The reason why the Washington Accords have not been implemented despite being signed on 4th December last year is because the conditions on the ground have not changed to allow for sustainable peace. The negotiations between the Congolese government and the M23 of rebel group in Doha, in Qatar, have not been progressing. There have also been attacks on territories, especially in the highlands of Minembwe, where the Wanyamulenge live, in the Masisi area, especially around the very strong mining town of Rubaya, where coltan is being mined, and there is competition between the Chinese and the Americans on access to that facility. So I think it is pressure. The Rwandans had expected that the sanctions will not be applied now, but they are significant because apart from sanctioning individuals, they are sanctioning the RDF as an institution. That is very big because it affects its access to global banking systems. And since the RDF is engaged in various commitments in different countries like Mozambique, Central African Republic, or the UN missions in South Sudan, and so on, it could have an impact. But I'm not yet sure how it will influence Rwanda's thinking on deployments in the Congo.
Right, so that covers then the impact it could have and influence on the Great Lakes region and its relations with neighboring countries. You touch on that, but how will this affect Rwanda's military reputation internationally?
As a fighting force, of course, its reputation remains strong. It is where it is somehow effective, where it is deployed, but could affect the relations, especially in training missions with other militaries. It could affect procurement. The military also is involved in the Rwandan economy. They have construction farms and haven't been a direct way of divesting them from the army. But if they don't sanction the government as a whole, I would think some of the financial transactions will continue based on the Ministry of Finance, not going through the RDF accounts. However, as you saw in the announcement by the Americans, they said their purpose is not to punish but influence decisions. So the point is, how will they influence the RDF defense posture in the Congo? There have been some sort of withdrawals, even recently in Masisi area, the Congolese army was able to kill the spokesperson of the M23 is because the RDF had withdrawn from that location and they had gone with their anti-aircraft systems, which allowed the drones, the Congolese government drones to operate. Even though the M23 independently has been building capacity to counter the drones and the squid, which are very big influence in the war. So on the ground, we understand that the Rwandans had assured the Americans that they are ready to move gradually to withdraw some of the forces, as long as the Congolese government also takes action against the FDLR rebel group, which is very complicated because a big part of the FDLR is integrated within militias that are allied to the Congolese government. So there could be some move towards withdraw to appease the Americans, but in the long term, it doesn't solve the conflict. It can suspend it for some few years, but then there's as long as the reasons why people are fighting have not been addressed, and as long as the Chinese and the Americans continue to compete for resources in the Congo.
If the Rwandan government goes silent about these sanctions, what might that indicate about Kigali's stance on M23 and the U.S. warning?
They are not silent. They issued a statement last night. The spokesperson of the government issued a statement, and they said that they are very disappointed because they sanctioned only one part, because Rwanda believes also the Congolese government is breaching the Washington Accord. But they also reiterated their commitment to implementing the accords. So it was not a strong statement. They reaffirmed their commitment. I think they will continue the diplomatic offensive because the United States has been a very long-term ally of the current Rwandan government. I don't think they want to disrupt that. But they have been diversifying over time. The relations with the Chinese, with other middle powers in the Middle East are good. But of course, international financial sanctions affect the global banking system, which uses the American dollar or the SWIFT system. So they will react gradually. They're continuing engaging. They have improved their lobbying capacity in the United States, especially within Congress. But you know the Trump administration, how it acts. If you look at how it has dealt with the tariffs across the globe, how it negotiates with Iran and so on, they are very good at strong arming whoever they feel should give into their demands. So managing the Trump administration is also a challenge that I believe the Rwanda government will continue working on.
The U.S. has also mentioned human rights abuses and massive displacement linked to the RDF and their support for M23, or their alleged support for the M23. How might this affect political dynamics within Rwanda?
Within Rwanda, there are no displacements, but there are indeed displacements in Congo. Whenever the M23 and RDF advances, especially when they advanced on the city of Vira in South Kivu, there were massive displacements. But previously, when they captured Goma, most of the displaced people were able to go back. But where there is fighting, there is. In Rwanda, there is, of course, pressure from the public for support, especially where the Congolese Rwandophones like the Banyamulenge are under attack. And usually the government also responds that because there's a belief if the Rwandophones are being attacked, the Rwanda government does nothing, then it is betraying one of the core reasons of existing as a government that stops the genocide. People would, of course, prefer stability, peace. Congo is Rwanda's big trading partner, even before this was started. Even now, the economic interests are continue to increase because of the sanctions the Congolese government, the financial sanctions and because of banking that the Congolese government has imposed on areas controlled by the M23. So it means they are more dependent on the supply chain through Rwanda. Though it has affected because when international human rights rather humanitarian organizations are not present because they have a big economic impact on the ground, it affects economic performance. So in Rwanda, the human rights situation is rather the violations and so on. At times they have impact. For instance, I give you an example. In areas of Rushuru, they are FDLR. I know FDLR are Rwandese Hutus in Congo. And there are also indigenous Hutus from Congo who do not come from Rwanda but have been there. Some of these people are closely related with some parts of Rwanda people, and there is a lot of intermarriages. So at times, when there is a counter insurgence operation is carried out by the M23, there are civilian casualties because these militia fight in civilian areas. They don't wear military uniform. So there is an impact. People die.
Right.
And you have seen in some of the reports of those killings, but it's very hard to differentiate between the civilian and the combatant.
Gonzaga, let's leave it there for now.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your time and your valuable analysis.
Thank you very much for having me too.
It's our pleasure. Gonzaga Mukanwa is a Rwandan political analyst giving us insights into the U.S. sanctions on the Rwanda Defense Force. It's time now for our news update. We get into the second hour of Rise and Shine. Good morning if you've just joined us. I'm Asanda Beda. We say good morning to Jolani Tulo Ngwepe for that news update. It's 7:01 Central African Time.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. The U.S. has imposed sanctions on the Rwanda Defense Force and top military officials over their role in ongoing fighting in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo and has called for the immediate withdrawal from the mineral-rich region. This includes Rwanda's Army Chief of Staff, Vincent Nyakarundi. In a statement, the U.S. State Department pointed out that days after President Donald Trump presided over a peace agreement between Rwanda and the DRC last December, the M23 fighters captured the Congolese city of Uvira in clear violation of that agreement. Senegal's Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko says he is willing to take his party out of the government and return to opposition if President Bassirou Diomaye Faye breaks from its vision. This has amid rumours of a power struggle between the two-party colleagues. Tensions have been high in the West African country following violence at universities and long drawn-out talks with the International Monetary Fund. Elizabeth Mapari reports.
Senegal is battling to raise cash and negotiate a new lending program with the IMF. The fund froze a $1.8 billion program in 2024 after Sonko's government uncovered misreported deaths by the previous administration. Sonko was barred from running in the 2024 presidential election due to a legal conviction and chose little-known Faye as his replacement candidate, who appointed Sonko as prime minister.
Reports from Sudan say the army has foiled a drone attack on the city of Al Obeid, the capital of North Kordofan state. Air defences intercepted the drone before it could launch a missile strike. The latest incident comes just days after 9 people were killed and several others injured in drone attacks that destroyed warehouses and an oil production facility. The BBC's Richard Cargo has the story.
Monday's drone strike marks a sharp escalation of violence in El Obeid, a city the paramilitary rapid support forces have been trying to encircle. The RSF, locked in a 3-year power struggle with the army, has stepped up aerial assaults in recent weeks, hitting civilian infrastructure. On Saturday, 9 people were killed when a drone struck the city's main market as residents inspected damage from an earlier attack. Both sides are increasingly relying on drones as fighting intensifies in the wider Kordofan region, where the UN says more than 100,000 people have been displaced in just 3 months.
Former Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe's son Bellarmine and Tobias Matonodze, also from Zimbabwe, charged with attempted murder, are expected to apply for bail in the Alexandra Magistrates Court in Johannesburg this morning. The pair's case was postponed for further investigations last week. It relates to a shooting incident at Mugabe's house in Hyde Park last month, where a 23-year-old man believed to be Mugabe's employee was shot and wounded. They are also charged with defeating the ends of justice and possession of a firearm. The firearm used in the shooting has not been found. Specialist investigator Mike Bolhays says despite the disappearance of the gun, the state still has a strong case against the pair.
If the firearm is not found, it means there's corruption. Those on the scene would know where the weapon is, and they must be seriously investigated. Otherwise, they must be all charged, because there's definitely defeating the ends of justice, and there's definitely a form of bribing and collusion and most probably intimidation. So the mere fact that the weapon just disappear cannot be allowed, and it must not be left aside. The case will definitely not fall apart if the weapon is never found, because all of those involved will then be charged.
Attacks on shipping and the closure of the Straits of Hormuz have sparked sharp rises in the prices of oil and gas. The Strait of Hormuz is a strategically vital waterway that connects the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman, serving as a crucial passage for global oil and liquefied natural gas exports. Large volumes of the commodities have to be shipped through the straits, which lie between the UAE and Iran. The BBC's Nick Marsh has the story.
You've got this very narrow passageway where all of the really big Middle Eastern oil producers, so Qatar, United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, of course, it has to go through there in order to get to the rest of the world. The vast majority of those customers are out here in Asia, so countries like Japan, South Korea and particularly China. Iran keeps threatening attacks on vessels. There's been some reports of a couple of attacks already. Shipping companies are saying it's not worth our while. We're not taking the risk. There's missiles flying overhead. So no cargo, no oil tankers in particular are going through.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulo Wepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In our sports headlines, South Africa will not host Rugby World Cup anytime soon. And Cameroon's Lionesses defeat the Super Falcons in the pre-WAFCON friendly. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Start your day right with Channel Africa Breakfast.
That smells delicious.
Live, 5 days a week. Wherever the hour finds you, across the world, here's your morning African lens on the world's leading story. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
And we enter the second hour of Rise and Shine here on Channel Africa. If you've just joined us, a very good morning to you on this Tuesday. My name is Asanda Beda. Stay connected to Africa and the world with Channel Africa, the international voice of the South African Broadcasting Corporation. Watch or listen anytime, anywhere at channelafrica.co.za, on the Channel Africa mobile app and on SABC Plus or via the DSTV and OpenView audio bouquets. You can also catch us on social media at Channel Africa, that's on Facebook, and then at Channel Africa 1 is all the other media, social media platforms. Channel Africa first with the African story globally. And what we'll be looking at this hour is the tensions in the Middle East, and they've escalated sharply as the US and Israel expand airstrikes against Iran. This follows missile and drone attacks across the Gulf. A new front has opened in Lebanon after Hezbollah launched strikes on Israel in response to the wider conflict. And this, of course, has prompted Israeli retaliatory airstrikes on southern Beirut. So we go there and talk about that. It's also the 2026 Energy Indaba, and that's happening in Cape Town here in South Africa. This gathering brings together leaders from government, industry, finance, and civil society to help shape Africa's energy future. We'll be discussing what the key discussions are there and what one can look forward to.
Es-tu préoccupé par quelque chose? Es-tu passionné par les questions qui comptent? As-tu une voix qui mérite d'être entendue? Eh bien, nous avons la plateforme parfaite pour toi. Téléphone-nous ou fais-nous un WhatsApp au +27 66 408 87 42 et nous te rappellerons. Sois dans la conversation.
Salut Channel Africa, ici Beno le diamant rouge et Bina l'export depuis le Cameroun, le pays des lions. Voilà.
Sois dans la conversation. Il ne s'agit pas seulement de parler, mais c'est ta chance d'exprimer ton point de vue, de partager tes opinions et de t'engager avec une communauté qui valorise ton avis. Suivez-nous sur les réseaux sociaux, visitez notre site www.channelafrica.co.za et préparez-vous à partager vos points de vue sur Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Bringing you the energy, news, and good vibes to kickstart your day. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
At 7:10 Central African Time, tensions in the Middle East have escalated sharply as the US and Israel expand airstrikes against Iran following missile and drone attacks across the Gulf. A new front has opened in Lebanon after Hezbollah launched strikes on Israel in response to the wider conflict, prompting Israel retaliatory airstrikes on southern Beirut. Global energy markets are under pressure. Oil shipments through the critical Strait of Hormuz have been disrupted. Air travel across the region is heavily affected, and investors are turning to safe haven assets such as gold and bonds. To help us understand the wider economic and market implications, we're joined by Professor Patrick Bond, a political economist and distinguished professor of sociology at the University of Johannesburg. Professor, thank you for joining us. Good morning.
It's great to be with you, Asanda. Warm greeting.
Good morning. It's our pleasure. So how do you assess the recent escalation with the US and Israel widening strikes on Iran, and then Hezbollah opening a new front in Lebanon?
Yes, I mean, the main disruptions I think that we're going to feel are in oil and liquefied natural gas prices, although we're not yet, I think, thank goodness, in South Africa and in much of Africa, we're not yet tuned into the new LNG, although that's been proposed. I think we've also seen a huge increase in the gold price, which supports some African countries, including South Africa. But the great tragedy will be with lives lost and infrastructure destroyed, and a sense that the geopolitical situation is currently working in favor of a very, very aggressive US and Israeli combination. There are Western countries that are basically lining up behind the US and Israel. They were sort of thought of as liberal democracies, and by all accounts, this is a very illiberal war. It's one to control oil flows. It's one to control the extent to which Iran poses a long-term threat if it were ever to get nuclear weapons. And of course, the promise by the Iranians is that they would never, ever do that, to use those words that the Omani foreign minister described Iran making concessions. And at this stage, with so much weaponry in place and with the Israelis in such a strong and aggressive position, one has to ask whether Donald Trump has really given up sort of US sovereignty. And many people in the US are doing so. And maybe the most heartening thing is that only 25% of the US population is supporting him. And we're seeing major gaps open up within Trump's own Make America Great Again coalition, especially the right-wing commentator Tucker Carlson asking some very tough questions. So things are very fluid, and it doesn't look like the war will end in coming days. Maybe it'll take more than weeks, it'll be months.
So South Africa is not that heavily impacted, but what about the other African economies? How are they likely to feel the impact, especially those who are reliant on imported oil and gas?
Well, we all are, aren't we? I mean, there is some oil produced in South Africa by squeezing coal. That's the Sasol operation in Secunda. So we have about 20% of our liquid petroleum coming from that source. It's also the world's #1 point source of CO2 emissions, we have to remember. So it's not a particularly good way to get oil. But yeah, most of the rest of the continent will see, some oil exporters, Angola, Nigeria, and some of the North African countries will have a boom because oil is already up about 14% since the bombing began on Saturday. And the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, as you've pointed out, does mean 20% of world oil will stop. And there was a huge fire at probably the largest of the Gulf refinery complexes in Saudi Arabia. It's not too sure who started that fire. The Iranians deny it. They obviously don't want to see oil infrastructure affected in this process. But the Qataris have had a couple of bombings at their big natural gas facilities, and they've closed them. Now, Tucker Carlson, whom I mentioned is the sort of far-right voice of anti-war sentiment in the U.S., he's actually just made the allegation that the Qataris and the Saudi governments have captured Mossad agents. So we may learn, actually, that some of the sabotage that's going on isn't actually coming from Iran, but as part of the general confusion in the area and the weakening of the Gulf Cooperation Council and Arab states. It may well be, if Carlson is correct, that this is connected to Israel's desire to generally shake things up and become the strongest. Israel has also signaled that it would now see Turkey as the next target after a regime change that it hopes will happen in Iran. So things are very fluid, but I think for most of Africa, we're going to always ask the question, are we too addicted to international imports, whether those be manufactured goods or, of course, oil and gas? And the dilemma of trying to have a just energy transition when Africa has such great hydro and wind and solar potential is that we've been doing that far too slowly.
Right. Also, key shipping lanes through the Strait of Hormuz have been disrupted after Iran continued their missile and drone attacks on Gulf states. So how might that particularly affect global energy markets and supply?
Yes, of course, that's where so much of the oil and gas comes through. So that's the main reason for the 20%. Well, people are even expecting JP Morgan, for example, the world's biggest bank, up to $120 a barrel. So that would be about an 80% increase if indeed that transpires once the implications, once stocks run down and those ships are stuck in the Gulf or can't get in to refuel. I might add that there's another area of shipping that South Africa certainly benefited from being closed, and that was the Red Sea, because the Houthis can now bring out their disruptive capacities. They haven't really done it quite yet, except if they identify ships going through the Red Sea via the Suez Canal to Israel. So that's been their main target. But I can certainly imagine that in solidarity with Iran, very soon the Houthis would stop the Suez Canal. That's about 12% of world shipping. It's mostly the container ships. So we're going to see around the Horn of Africa quite a bit more traffic. South Africa doesn't really benefit because those are ships that are just circling around and it takes an extra 2 weeks, but they don't do much in the way of refueling or stopping in South Africa. And it just shows that I think the terrain of geopolitics, the inability of the rest of the civilized world to get some sort of resistance to Trump and his ability, one day to kidnap the president of Venezuela and the next to threaten takeover of the Panama Canal or Greenland and the next, to bomb Iran unilaterally alongside Israel. This reflects a complete failure of the systems like the UN Security Council, or what he's now also set up as a board of peace, forces all the countries to take sides. I think for Africa, because only Egypt and Morocco joined the Board of Peace, there were no other African countries invited, no sub-Saharan African countries. And that does split the BRICS right in half. So Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa had existed from 2009 to 23 and then expanded to include 5 others, and those included Iran, but also across the strait, its new enemy, UAE, as well as Egypt. Saudi Arabia thought it would join, and also Indonesia, a Muslim-dominated country, but yet one that has been in the U.S. orbit and also as part of the Board of Peace. India is the host of the BRICS this year, and I've just named about 5 of those, aside from Iran, of course, which will line up with the United States and Israel. Ethiopia, we'd add to that. And then we'd look at, as another force, particularly Brazil, South Africa as the main democracies, trying, especially in the Hague group later this week, that is the group that South Africa co-chairs with Colombia, to try to get the international rule of law established. And maybe there's a chance, but these are very small countries, South Africa, Colombia, Malaysia being the biggest. And then you've got the other big factor, which would be China and Russia. So far, they've stood by. It may be that the Russians have helped the Iranians recover. They did that in the June 2025 war when the grid went down. But don't forget that Russia has, as Vladimir Putin himself has said, about 2 million of its own citizens, that is, Jewish Russians who moved to Israel. And they're, of course, in the Israel Defense Force. And they're also involved, Russia, with some of the coal and oil trade to Israel. South Africa, the number one coal supplier to Israel. China having about $32 billion of trade with Israel this last year, including drones, the ones that are so devastating in Gaza, where the genocide is still underway. Brazil supplies 9% of the oil. India and Israel are very interconnected, and Prime Minister Modi was just in Israel addressing the parliament. And I could go on, of course, Egypt, Ethiopia with its troops in the IDF, the UAE very tight with the Abraham Accords, except now maybe tensions are rising because of Israel's very destructive role. But what it means is that what we'd hoped to see is a sort of counterbalancing or multipolar, if you sort of say, well, the BRICS had some rhetoric about supporting systems in which more just multilateral institutions would emerge and peace would prevail. Well, that's certainly not happening, and the BRICS didn't really present any counterweight or any threat to the US and Israel or to their friends in Europe. I must say, though, that one ray of hope is that the European citizens and the US citizens are so strongly against the war that it would be hard for their own politicians to keep pretending that this is a public interest war. It's obviously a war for very particular interests. And when you see only 25% of the US supporting this war, which I think is quite remarkable, having lived there and gone to university there, and when you see some governments in Europe, like Spain, denying the US its bases to use to launch attacks on Iran, and when you see Ireland and Norway and Switzerland and Serbia beginning to break away from the pro-US, pro-Israeli bloc, the so-called axis of genocide in the West, this is encouraging. So there may be some very interesting splits, and even if the BRICS don't stand up to what people had hoped for, that is a major countervailing force, because they're, I think, too tightly intertwined with Israeli interests, we do see, I think, a chance for the world to say this isn't right, and our politicians better watch out, otherwise election time, they'll be punished.
Right. Professor Bond, thank you so much again for your very insightful analysis. We appreciate your time this morning.
Thanks, Asanda. Good to be with you.
Thank you. Professor Patrick Bond is a political economist and distinguished professor of sociology at the University of Johannesburg here in South Africa.
Africa Update on Channel Africa with Lulu Kabu.
South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has informed UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres that South Africa will withdraw its troop contribution to MONUSCO, the UN peacekeeping mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo, after nearly 27 years of involvement. Defense expert Dean Wingren, what are the main security implications of South Africa withdrawing troops from MONUSCO, and why now?
South Africa has been part of the MONUSCO mission since it was established in 1999, and is South Africa's longest-running peacekeeping and peace enforcement mission. So it's not something to be taken lightly when the president says that he's unilaterally withdrawing from the mission. Why now is the question. Well, the MONUSCO mission has always been intended to be terminated initially at the end of 2025, and then it was extended to the end of this year. So with the funding crisis within the UN generally, there's less funds for these peacekeeping missions, and hence the UN has had to cut back on the various contributing countries and equipment.
Africa Update with Lulu Kabu, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time. A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Let's go to the 2026 Energy Indaba now, which is underway in Cape Town, South Africa. And this gathering brings together leaders from government, industry, finance, and civil society to help shape Africa's energy future. Key discussions are expected to focus on the energy transition, unlocking investment, driving innovation, and ensuring equitable access to power, all seen as critical pillars for sustainable economic growth across the continent. For more on this, we cross live to our economics reporter, Channel Africa's very own Innocent Samosa, who's attending the Indaba in Cape Town. Innocent, good morning. How are you?
Good morning to you, colleague, and our listeners at home. It's really good to be alongside you.
Great, and we love this update. So let's start here. What is the dominant theme emerging from this year's Energy Indaba, and how does it reflect Africa's current energy and economic realities?
Indeed, colleague. In fact, the dominant theme is Africa's energy pathway to prosperity. Now, you and I know, colleague, that energy security and access still remains core priority in terms of, the African continent. A major focus at the Indaba is really tackling the issues around energy poverty and access gaps. You would recall that the Minister of Electricity, Hosien Churamukgopa, he said that we out of the woods in terms of load shedding and all of that. But the long-standing issue is that of energy poverty, that electricity is indeed affordable, so to speak, but the element, it's available, but it's not affordable. So that's the energy poverty element that he was mentioning. So with hundreds of millions of Africans, Asanda, still lacking reliable and affordable electricity, I would imagine panel discussions here would focus on finding solutions because you know that the economic growth, issues around healthcare, industrialization, education remains pretty much constrained, equally so by energy shortages, so to speak. So this, in many respects, it does reflect the ongoing reality that energy access is not just a technical, but indeed deeply tied to social and economic development. So issues around attracting investment and capital mobilization will be key also. But in summary, going back to your question, the dominant theme is that of this year's Indaba is pathway to prosperity, which of course the organizers say that it's Africa's urgent need to end energy poverty, put the investment led growth in the sector, but also a commitment to sustainable and inclusive energy transition. So the policies and regional cooperation as foundations for economic expansion. So those are the things that will form part of the discussions here. But we are told that the president is likely to address the delegates, but we're certain that the Minister of Electricity will also, Hosien Churamukgopa, will also give a keynote address this morning around 9 o'clock. Asanda?
Right. What about Africa's reliance on traditional energy sources? How are policymakers balancing that push for renewable energy with this reality?
I'm glad you're bringing that up, Asanda, because many African governments are indeed actively promoting renewables, such as solar, wind, hydro in Mozambique, Kawarabasa. So I think renewables are cost competitive in many regions, and they help reduce energy import bills, so to speak. But again, the solar and wind projects really challenged by the issues around policy coordination that is not aligned with the investment that is needed. But again, I think going back to your question, Asanda, the off-grid and mini-grid solutions often renewable based, are based on deployed to really expand access to rural communities where the grid expansion is pretty much expensive. Now, it's going back to what we've been discussing about the issue of energy poverty. So all I can say that at this stage, policymakers pretty much recognize that traditional energy sources remain essential in the village, as you rightly alluded to, at least in the nearest term. But it does seem as though there is that focus because fuel fossils, especially natural gas, continue to play a role in empowering industries and transport and electricity generation, where renewables, Asanda, not yet sufficient, for lack of a better term. Asanda?
Okay, we'll leave it there for now, and all the best there in Cape Town. I'm sure we'll be checking in with you in our various programs here on Channel Africa throughout the day. Thanks, Innocent.
Thank you, Asanda. In fact, I should have a house here now.
Absolutely, you just need to. And that house should be a holiday house for the rest of us when we're tired of Joburg.
Thank you, colleague.
Great stuff there. Innocent Samusa, Channel Africa's economics reporter, joining us live from the 2026 Energy Indaba that's taking place in Cape Town there. So we'll get more details or more updates from him as that continues and our programming at Channel Africa continues. Get in touch with us. Our social media handles on Facebook, we are at Channel Africa. And then for the others, at Channel Africa 1. We also live stream on YouTube via that at Channel Africa 1 handle. So you've got a lot of ways to connect with us and we welcome you to do so. 7:30 Central African time it is. Let's say good morning to Dwalani Tulo Ngwepe. She has our news headlines.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Making headlines, the U.S. has imposed sanctions on the Rwanda Defense Force and top military officials over their role in ongoing fighting in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo and has called for the immediate withdrawal from the mineral-rich region. This includes Rwanda's Army Chief of Staff Vincent Nyakarundi. The rescue operation at a collapsed building in Omonde in the south of Johannesburg in South Africa is resuming this morning after being abandoned late last night due to safety fears for the emergency workers. And finally, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates and Israel have reported missiles entering their airspace. I will have details on these and other stories at 8 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's give you first, with the African story globally, an update from the world of sports. And here is Fikile Lingwati with that.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Kick off with rugby news, Asanda, where South Africa will not be hosting a Rugby World Cup in the foreseeable future. South Africa's rugby says that South Africa will never make enough money for World Rugby to justify hosting a World Cup tournament in the Republic. This stark admission is based purely on economics, and with that in mind, South African Rugby CEO Riaan Obelhorza says it makes better business sense to establish the Springbok brand in markets that are able to host future World Cups. Oberholzer says it is now time to do what is in the best interest of World Rugby.
I think we have moved away from that philosophy that everybody must get an equal chance to host a World Cup. New Zealand will not make the money out of a World Cup that a World Cup needs. South Africa will not make the money out of a World Cup that World Rugby needs. So I don't think it is a negative on us. It is more what is more important for the best interest of World Rugby.
With that in mind, South African Rugby believes it is better to establish the Springbok brand in the USA and become the go-to team for American supporters unfamiliar with rugby.
For us as SA Rugby, to keep on creating financial stability for us, we have to start looking at taking our brand wider than just South Africa. And we know about the support that we have in London, for example, and you all saw when we play there the massive South African support we have. America is a very important market for us in the run-up to 31 World Cup, as you said. We want to establish ourselves there as a team that is known to the majority of the Americans that will support the game.
On to cricket news, Zimbabwe captain Sikandar Raza says his team will take valuable lessons from a successful T20 World Cup campaign in Sri Lanka and India. The African nation bowed out of the global tournament, having beaten co-host Sri Lanka and former champions Australia before suffering 3 losses in the Super 8s phase. Raza says the defeats against West Indies, India and South Africa was a real eye-opener, but will stand the side in good stead for the future. On to athletics. Over 3,000 athletes gear up for the 3rd National Para Games in Abuja, Nigeria. Organized by the National Sports Commission, NSC, the Games have evolved into a key fixture on Nigeria's sporting calendar. The stage is set for the 3rd National Para Games, Nigeria's largest and most prestigious para-sport event, scheduled to be held from the 26th of March to the 3rd of April in Abuja. And finally, Australian Grand Prix organizers say they are really confident the travel chaos caused by the ongoing conflict in the Middle East will not impact the opening race of the Formula One season this weekend. Close to 1,000 members of staff have been forced to rearrange flights, with an estimated 5,000 of them reportedly said to be flown from Europe on charter planes. It comes after the US and Israel launched an attack against Iran on Saturday, sparking retaliatory strikes across the region. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Figede Nwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
zochitika ndi madaphiri kamlondola wa zochitika pena paliponse.
mabhizinesi osiyanasiyana mdziko la south africa ayamba kukhoma msonkho wa 30% akamagulitsa katundu wawo ku dziko la united states of america. ndiye panotele ndikatswiri wa zachuma mu dziko la malawi dr betha chikadza. boma la south africa masiku apitawo linanena kuti ngati america akani kutsitsa msonkhowu, bomalo lipeza misika ina. mungatifotokozere kuti ndizotheka south africa kupeza misika yomwe ingabweretse ndalama pafupifupi $15 billion zomwe imapezeka ku misika ya ku america.
tinene kuti izizi zitha kuchitika koma sizingachitike mwa pompopompo, chifukwa tikaonetsetsa izi zinthu zokuti inali msika wa dziko la america unali msika wakukhazikika umene dziko la south africa linali likazolowera kale. tsono kuti tingonena kuti dziko la south africa lipezanso msika mwina mwansangasanga kuti lizitumiza katundu wake, mwina zisizingachitike pachokuti tikunena papa $15 billion ndi ndalama zambiri ndithu.
zochitika lolemba mpaka lachisanu pa nthawi ya 7 koloko kufikira 8 koloko madzulo pa Channel Africa.
Conversations are happening, and Channel Africa is at the heart of them. We tell the African story with clarity, pride, and purpose, reaching audiences that matter to your brand. Partner with us and connect your business with listeners across borders in multiple languages and markets. For partnership opportunities, sponsorship, or sales, email us at partnership@channelafrica.co.za. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Let's now catch you up with what's happening in the world of business. We say good morning again to Tabiso Lehugu.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and good morning. The chairperson of South Africa's Parliament's Standing Committee on Public Accounts, Asanda Beda, says it is important that government undertakes a skills review. He was taking part in the regular media briefing where various chairpersons of Parliament brief the media and stakeholders. During the briefing by the chairpersons representing the finance cluster, Zibi said state money was wasted on $100,000 projects because appropriately skilled people were not appointed. He says while the ghost worker audit by government is welcomed, it needs to be determined what skills are available in the state.
Much of this is caused by the employment of unsuitable people to critical management and executive positions. I am not happy that the government is just hunting for ghost workers, which is very important. What we additionally need is a skills review and audit to be prepared to redeploy or eject people who are either non-performing or underqualified.
The South African Department of Employment and Labour has urged construction companies to prioritise hiring South Africans. The call comes after the department's raid at 2 construction sites in Clayville, Ekurhuleni, last week, where 50 undocumented foreign nationals were arrested. The multidisciplinary operation targeted non-compliant construction companies. The department's Deputy Minister, Jomo Sibiya, has warned employers that hiring undocumented individuals will result in serious consequences, including fines and possible imprisonment.
We are trying to protect our country, we are protecting our people, but we are saying to employers, prioritize South Africans. Let's employ our people. We do have skills and we have a high level of unemployment in our country.
Motorists in South Africa can expect to pay more at the fuel pump this month, with the price of diesel increasing by as much as 65 South African cents a litre from Wednesday. This comes amid rising geopolitical tensions in the Middle East. The Department of Mineral and Petroleum Resources has announced that the price of both grades of petrol is set to increase by 20 cents per litre. The price of diesel is expected to increase by between 62 cents and 65 per litre. The retail price of illuminating paraffin is set to increase by 58 cents and LP gas by 23 cents per kilogram. The department's Robert Maki.
The reason for this adjustment are the higher Brent crude oil prices on average due to tension between USA and Iran during the period under review. The average international product prices followed the increasing trend of the oil prices. The rand continued to strengthen against the US dollar and cushioned the fuel prices by close to 20 cents per litre.
Egypt's central bank data shows that net foreign assets in the country rose by $4.2 billion in January to an all-time high of $29.54 billion as Gulf investments, a 2024 currency devaluation and strong remittances continued to bring in dollars. Remittances from workers abroad rose to record $4.0 billion in December, bringing total remittances for all of 2025 to $41.5 billion, up from $29.6 billion in 2024. Oil prices rose for a third day as the widening of U.S.-Israeli conflict with Iran and threats to shipping through the Strait of Hormuz heightened fears of supply disruptions from key Middle East producing region. Brent crude futures were at $79.44 a barrel, up $1.70 or 2.2% on Monday. The contract surged to an all-time as $82.37, its highest since 2025, though it paid those gains to settle at 6.7% higher. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 364, Botswana 13 pula 7, Kenya 128 shilling 89, and Zambia 18 kwacha 98. The BRICS countries in Brazil, the dollar there will cost you 5 rand 15. Russia 77 rubles 165, India 91 rupees 48, China 6 yuan 88, and in South Africa the dollar will cost you 16 rand 8 cents. 74 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Gold is trading at $5,366, while platinum is at $2,298 per ounce. Brent crude oil is at $79.33 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Thabisolo Huku.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam. Rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
A regional knowledge-sharing event on decent work in the construction sector has heard that in South Africa, a construction worker dies every week. Jens Dreying Christensen, Senior Enterprise Development Specialist at the International Labour Organization, says the sector is deeply fragile for many workers. He says work is temporary, high risk, low paid, and very often work is too formal. Tlantla Mahlangu has more.
The rapidly growing urban development and increased infrastructure demand has led to a boom in construction across Southern Africa. This has brought with it many business and job opportunities at all occupational levels in the construction sector. The sector is characterized by poor labor rights adherence, decent work deficits, with more severe and fatal workplace accidents rates and low labor productivity. The Decent Work in Construction project, implemented by the International Labour Organization in collaboration with the SADC Secretariat with the support of Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency, is a response to these challenges and to the increasing demand for infrastructure in Southern Africa. The project seeks to contribute towards increased compliance with labour rights and to enhance labour productivity in the SADC construction sector. Jens Dreying Christensen, Senior Enterprise Development Specialist at the ILO, says the pursuit of decent work in construction is not only a moral imperative for the SADC region, but is an economic necessity.
Unsafe, informal, precarious construction does not build competitive and sustainable and resilient economies, but safer, skilled, accountable construction creates resilient enterprises, and resilient enterprises build resilient societies. So I want to argue that the real foundation of our cities, those beautiful cities that are coming up across the SADC region, it's not steel, it's not cement, it is the responsible enterprise, it is the worker in that enterprise, and every procurement decision, every contract, every enforcement action, every training program determines whether we build risk or resilience and productivity.
Agnes Moilwa, Deputy Director General of the South African Department of Labour and Chairperson of the Project Steering Committee, says decent work should be a lived reality.
It's a pity that not all employers see it that way. Because I believe that you lose nothing when you treat people in a humane way. That shows that you not only view them as machinery that helps you to amass wealth, but you see them as partners that are able to build. And you know, the construction sector is something to lo and behold. Literally, you can see a before and after picture where there was just once just dust. You see buildings, state-of-the-art buildings. And I believe that we need to begin to appreciate men and women that engage in these back-breaking exercises. So it is a sweat, tears, hard work of vulnerable workers, sometimes underpaid.
The construction sector continues to see an increase of women-owned businesses. Neo Kubala from DSM Construction and Supplies is from one of them.
The reason that I started operating in the construction sector is because I saw a gap that I felt it needed to be filled by them, which it was very difficult at the beginning, but as I go along, I learned a lot and managed to be where I am today. And being part of the program, Decent Work, it helped me in many ways, whereby I managed to implement few items that aligned with the company in terms of production.
The event, attended by more than 110 delegates from across SADC, is expected to strengthen the capacities to roll out practical approaches and tools for promoting decent work and labor productivity, and for incentivizing labor law compliance in small workplaces that can be applied at sectoral level, and opportunities for collaboration and decent work community building. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Tlantla Mahlangu in Johannesburg.
Stay connected to Africa and the world with Channel Africa, the international voice of the South African Broadcasting Corporation. You can connect via channelafrica.co.za. Channel Africa, first with the African story globally.
The Morning Switch Weekend with the Shy Guy.
I Show Speed, often called Speed, who is a popular American YouTuber and live streamer known for his high-energy personality, loud reactions, and unpredictable humor. He visited Ethiopia, and he was shocked what he found out actually when he got to Ethiopia. He got to find out that, they don't use the Gregorian calendar. That is, we are in 2026 right now. And he got to find out they are in 2018.
2018? 2018.
Nah, you trolling me.
It's 2026. No. It ain't 2026? Wait, hold on. Wait, we in the past? Ronaldo is still in Real Madrid. Everything is in the past here.
Oh man, how shocked the Speed was. He went back in time.
Saturday and Sunday mornings belong to the Morning Switch. 3 to 6 a.m. Central African Time. Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time.
The International Labour Organization, ILO, in collaboration with the SADC Secretariat and other partners, have convened a capacity-building knowledge-sharing event in Johannesburg, South Africa. Its purpose is to disseminate good practices and to contribute towards increased compliance with labour rights and to enhance labour productivity in the SADC, the construction sector. To discuss this further, we have Naomi Lintini, Project Manager for the Decent Work in Construction project. Naomi, thank you for joining us. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
It's our pleasure. So what is this event and why now? Let's talk about its purpose specifically.
Okay, so this event for us is a very important event. We have brought together all the 16 SADC member states. And the reason we have brought all these member states here is that we want to share the good practice of the implementation of the Decent Work in Construction project. This Decent Work in Construction project has been in operation for the past 3 years. And during those past 3 years, we piloted activities in Mozambique, South Africa, and Zimbabwe on how we can improve compliance with labor laws in the construction sector, while at the same time ensuring that enterprises having a higher labor productivity. And that is in the background of the fact that the construction sector is one of the largest sectors in Southern Africa this time.
What does the project actually entail? What does the Decent Work project entail?
The Decent Work project entails intervening at various system levels to ensure that the situation in the construction sector, especially related to labor rights compliance, is made workable for everybody. Because what happens now is that you have got workers whom we call vulnerable workers who are not having access to their labor rights. So in the Decent Work in Construction project, we look at what are the various situations of workers and who are the key actors involved, so that we can work together with the key actors in the labor market to ensure that all workers in the construction sector have got decent working conditions. And decent working conditions means that the enterprises that are employing these workers are complying with labor rights of their respective countries.
So can you elaborate then on some of the challenges that are faced within this sector, in the construction sector, and how they continue to, be a challenge? You mentioned labor rights and working conditions.
Yeah, so within the broad area of labor rights and working conditions, one of the challenges has been the ability of especially small enterprises to abide by rules and regulations that relate to occupational safety and health, and that affects workers. The other issue is that some of the workers have got no access to medical support. For example, in the case that they fall or they have got an accident, they have got no insurance so that they can be treated very well. The other challenge is that some of the workers do not have contracts. And because they don't have contracts, they cannot have a continuous employment record. And that affects their ability to have access to social security at the end of their employment life. So when you put these challenges collectively, you find the situation that what we call vulnerable workers in the construction sector are what we call shortchanged because they don't have a regular employment which can give them the benefit of having lived in an employment situation which will give them social security at the end of their employment life.
And who are these vulnerable workers within the construction center? Can you give us a face? Is it
Yes.
women? Is it those from previously disadvantaged backgrounds? Is it young people?
So the vulnerable workers are a series of a number of groups. We have got what we call new labor market entrants. So young people who are getting into the labor market for the first time, they are not very knowledgeable about what working conditions are. They are not knowledgeable about what their labor rights are. The other group is workers who have got low level skills and who may not have the capacity to advocate for themselves when they are at the employment setup. Then among all these, we find the situation that women are the most disadvantaged because working in the construction sector, which is largely male dominated, you find that women may not have the conditions and which are convenient for them to work. For example, on a construction site, you might find that the ablution facilities are not available for women only. They are for same ablution facilities for male and females, which is quite a disadvantage for women. So these are the ones that we generally call vulnerable workers.
Right. On the front of fatal workplace accidents and sometimes low productivity as a result of that, what needs to be done to make the employers more accountable?
I think we need to start with, before we even talk about accountability, to start with investigating to find out if the employers understand what their obligations are. We have been working as a project with small enterprises, and our finding is that most of the small enterprises do not even understand the laws of the land. They don't understand their obligations. And as a result of that, they offer conditions that are less than adequate for their workers. But beyond that, we also need to come together, the employers and the workers, through the employer organizations and worker organizations to discuss the challenges that each side faces and to see how the solution can be found by working collectively together. Of course, working again with the government, because we know that the departments of inspectorates also are working very hard to ensure that we have got a working environment in the construction sector that is conducive for workers, but also providing benefit for the enterprises.
So some of the key takeaways from day one of the event, what are those that you can share with us and also what's going to be discussed today?
I think one of the key takeaways which we have found today is that everyone has come to this common understanding that compliance with labor rights and labor productivity are sides of the same coin, that you cannot have one and not have the other, and that if you want productivity, you need to make sure that you are providing good working conditions. That if you want good working conditions, then you need to make sure that the company is producing quality products so that it can earn income to pay for those good working conditions. So that was one of the key takeaways. The second key takeaway was that it is important that all the actors in the construction sector work together. This is not just the work of government. It is not the work of it's not only the work of worker organizations or the work of enterprises. If we want a solution, we need to all work collectively to find the solution. And those solutions can be different depending on the situation, depending on the environment, and depending on the country. But working together is key.
What are the other outcomes that you are expecting as the gathering continues and maybe at the end?
So as we continue today, we are going to present what we have done in the project, because all that we have done in the project has been brought together in a guidance note. So this is going to be a guidance note on promoting decent work and productivity in the construction sector, and it will be available for all SADC member states who want to use the same approach that we use. The other main outcome of this event today is that we are expecting all the participants on delegates to sign a commitment to promote decent work in the construction sector. So this is a pledge. Each one of them will pledge to do what it takes to comply with labor rights, but also to promote labor rights compliance in the construction sector, in whatever position that they are, whether they are from government or they are from worker organizations or they are enterprises, including the business development service providers who provide training to the sector. So for us, that is a great, it will be a great achievement once all these people have signed a commitment, because we then expect them to go and abide by the commitments that they have signed.
Naomi, we thank you for your time and all the best for the rest of this project and work that will continue, I guess, even after this gathering. So we appreciate it.
Thank you very much, and happy to have been here.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Naomi Lentini is project manager for the Decent Work in Construction project, and that gathering is happening here in Johannesburg, South Africa, and the purpose is to disseminate good practices and to contribute towards increased compliance when it comes to labor rights, when it comes to enhancing labor productivity in the construction sector, focusing on the SADC region of our continent. Right, we enter now the second hour of Rise and Shine, and we'll tell you what's coming up in just a bit in this hour. Let's start you off with our news. My name is Asanda Beda, and our news is by Jalani Tulongwebe. It's now 8 o'clock Central African time.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. The U.S. has imposed sanctions on the Rwanda Defense Force and top military officials over their role in ongoing fighting in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo and has called for the immediate withdrawal from the mineral-rich region. This includes Rwanda's Army Chief of Staff, Vincent Nyakarundi. In a statement, the U.S. State Department pointed out that a few days after President Donald Trump presided over a peace agreement between Rwanda and the DRC last December, the M23 fighters captured the Congolese city of Uvira in clear violation of that agreement. The death toll from an attack by a group of unidentified men in a town of South Sudan's Ruweng administrative area on Sunday has risen to 169 people from an earlier estimate of 122. Information Minister James Nyalak and Majog said the latest attack took place in Abenom in Ruweng when youth from the Mayom County in a neighboring Unity State stormed the town and fought for more than 3 hours. 90 of those killed are believed to be civilians and 79 government soldiers. The death toll could rise further. Violence in the country has increased in recent months as political fighting threatens a fragile 2018 peace deal. The rescue operation at a collapsed building in Omonde in the south of Johannesburg in South Africa is resuming this morning after being abandoned late last night due to safety fears for the emergency workers. The incident has left 6 people dead, 2 were rescued and another one is in hospital. City of Johannesburg MMC for Public Safety Dr. Mgcini Chwaku said the missing 3 were located in the rubble, but the structure was not safe enough to continue with the operation in the evening.
The rescue operation carried on up until around 8-9 o'clock last night, and due to the bad structural integrity of the building, we actually had to call the search off, but there were some visuals of the 3 missing individuals under the rubble, but because of the structural integrity, they actually had to abort the operation. Then they're going to resume just now at about 8 o'clock. There's proper enough light
Former Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe's son Belamine and Tobias Matonhodze, also from Zimbabwe, charged with attempted murder, are expected to apply for bail in the Alexandra Magistrates Court in Johannesburg this morning. The pair's case was postponed for further investigations last week. It relates to a shooting incident at Mugabe's house in Hyde Park last month, where a 23-year-old man believed to be Mugabe's employee was shot and wounded. They are also charged with defeating the ends of justice and the possession of a firearm. The firearm used in the shooting has not been found. Special investigator Mike Ballhays says despite the disappearance of the gun, the state still has a strong case against the pair.
If the firearm is not found, it means there's corruption. Those on the scene would know where the weapon is, and they must be seriously investigated. Otherwise, they must be all charged, because there's definitely defeating the ends of justice, and there's definitely a form of bribing and collusion and most probably intimidation. So the mere fact that the weapon just disappear cannot be allowed, and it must not be left aside. The case will definitely not fall apart if the weapon is never found, because all of those involved will then be charged.
Qatar, the United Arab Emirates and Israel have reported missiles entering their airspace. Meanwhile, Israel's attack on Iran continued deep into the night, including a strike on Iran's state broadcaster, which it said had been dismantled, but the broadcaster itself said its operations have not been disrupted. The Iranian Red Crescent says more than 550 people have been killed so far. The US says 6 of its service members have died. The BBC's Liz Doucette has the details.
Loud explosions rip through the streets of Tehran. Columns of smoke tower in the skies around military targets in residential areas. In the midst of this turmoil, Iran is trying to project stability and continuity. Until a new supreme leader is chosen, a 3-man council is in charge. Its head, Ali Reza Arafi, issued a statement. He condemned the US and Israeli strikes and warned they would be proven wrong.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Cholani Tulo Wepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In a sports headline, Proteas relish favourite tag ahead of T20 semi-final showdown. And Kenya suspends 27 athletes for doping violations. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa. From Africa's broadcast capital to the furthest corners of the globe, this is Rise and Shine. Every weekday mornings on Channel Africa.
The third and final hour is on Channel Africa of Rise and Shine. Stay connected to Africa and the world with Channel Africa, the international voice of the South African Broadcasting Corporation. You can watch or listen anytime, anywhere on channelafrica.co.za. That's our website. And Channel Africa mobile app, as well as the SABC Plus app, or you can listen via the DSTV and OpenView audio bouquets. We're also on social media. Our Facebook handle is Channel Africa, and then it's at Channel Africa 1 for all the other platforms. Channel Africa, first with the African story globally. So what's coming up on this hour of Rise and Shine? The rescue operation at a collapsed building in Omondi in Johannesburg, here in South Africa. It has resumed. A concrete floor that was under construction caved in and collapsed, and 6 people have been confirmed dead on that. We get an update. Then the United States has lifted sanctions on 3 senior Malian military officials previously accused of ties to Russia's Wagner mercenary network, signaling a marked shift in Washington's approach to the Sahel. The officials had been penalized over their relationship with the Russian private military company, now largely absorbed into Moscow's Africa cooperations. We'll be discussing that with an analyst to see what this means, and also for particularly communities that have accused Malian forces and Wagner operatives of abuses. Those stories and more coming up in this hour. My name is Asanda Beda.
Zilipendwa na Abedi Jean de la Croix.
Historia msikilizaji ya Valentine Day au siku ya wapendanao ilianzia katika nyakati za kale za dola la Roma. Watafiti wengi wa historia wanaamini kuwa siku hii inahusishwa na sherehe za kipagani zilizokuwa zikifanyika kila mwaka katikati ya mwezi Februari. Msikilizaji, sherehe hizo zilijulikana kama Lupercalia na zilifanyika kuadhimisha uzazi, upendo na mwanzo wa majira ya kuchipua.
Zilipendwa kila Jumamosi kuanzia saa 12 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati hadi saa 1 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa with you everywhere you go.
South Africa is marking 3 decades since the adoption of its constitution, one of the most progressive in the world. As part of Human Rights Month, government and stakeholders gathered in Johannesburg to launch the 30 Years of the Constitution program under the theme 30 Years of Constitutional Democracy, One Constitution, One Nation, Co-Reflect, Renew, Recommit. Our reporter Lebogang Mabange has the story.
The year 2026 marks 30 years since South Africa adopted its constitution, a document that laid the foundation for human dignity, equality, freedom, and the rule of law. Speaking at the launch in Johannesburg, South Africa's Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, Mamoloko Kubayi, reflected on the significance of the constitution and the inclusive process that shaped it.
Because of the adoption of the constitution 30 years ago, we now have a foundation upon which we can strive towards the common vision for unity in diversity, while strengthening the culture of respect for human rights and the rule of law in South Africa. The constitution marking process was one of the most inclusive process in modern times. The inclusivity of the process is best described by Justice Albie Sachs when he said the following about the constitution, I quote, "We wanted a constitution that was smiling to the people, but it mustn't be a sneer smile."
Research by the Human Sciences Research Council also highlights how many South Africans continue to measure democracy through their daily lived experiences. Chief Executive Officer of the HSRC, Professor Sarah Moswetsa, says communities say progress has been made, but challenges remain.
These communities are saying to us that capability and material well-being remains important, that across all communities that we've interacted with, people spoke of democracy as both a milestone, but sometimes a myth for them. They are hopeful, however, in principle, but they are also saying that there needs to be justice for all. They spoke of schools without resources, infrastructure without maintenance. And yes, we have built the schools, but without maintenance, those schools 30 years are not sustainable in terms of infrastructure.
The adoption of the constitution also marked a turning point for women in South Africa, particularly in securing equal rights. Chair of the board of the South African Women in Dialogue, Toko Mpumlwana, reflected on how women were denied basic freedoms before democracy.
Before 1994, Black women in particular and women under general were denied rights. I weave in my own experience that when I started working, I could not I was shocked that I couldn't open a bank account. I needed my parent as an adult, or when I got married, my husband. And that was life at the time. And so the concept of human rights was not operational. The rights were racialized and gendered.
She adds that women played a key role in ensuring gender equality was firmly protected in the Constitution.
And as women of South Africa, through the Women's National Coalition, we made sure that this Constitution is very clear about equality, and especially in terms
of gender.
As South Africa commemorates 30 years of constitutional democracy, the program encourages citizens to reflect on the country's progress, renew their commitment to democratic values, and recommit to building a more equal society. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebogang Mabange in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Parlez-vous couramment le français? Êtes-vous passionné par la radio? Et êtes-vous qualifié pour travailler en Afrique du Sud? Envoyez-nous votre CV et vos 3 minutes démo en MP3 à @channelafrica.co.za pour avoir une chance de rejoindre la famille Channel Africa. Si vous n'avez pas de réponse après 14 jours, cela signifie que vous n'avez pas été retenu. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
9 to 12 midday Central African Time. On the Move with Palisa Tau and Benjamin Mushatama.
Now, when you go to the hospital, there's medical attention that you need, and that's the only experience you're expecting to have. If you are a transgender person, sometimes those experiences can be marred by the demand of trying to understand your gender, your sexuality, and not particularly getting the assistance that you need.
One time, I was sexually abused by someone who used to live next door to my house. So when I went to the police to report, I was in a weave, I was wearing a dress, and when I got there, the police person that helped me said to me, obviously we're gonna rape you because why do you walk around looking like trying to be a woman when you are a man? And after that, the person just walked scot-free.
How do you deal with that? Because there's a double barrel abuse there. So it's not even double barrels, there's kind of multi-dimensional forms of abuse.
I think one thing that I will tell you about trans people is we are strong, not because we want to be strong, but because we don't have an option. It is what it is. Because the struggles that we face each and every day are like unimaginable.
Keeping you on the know and on the move. Call us on +27 63 406 9126. And contribute to the conversation.
Just a little shy of 15 minutes past 8 Central African Time here on Rise and Shine. We go to this story now. The rescue operation at a collapsed building in Omondi in Johannesburg in South Africa has resumed. A concrete floor that was under construction caved in and collapsed. 6 people have been confirmed dead, and it is believed that 3 people are still trapped under piles of rubble. So to get the latest, we're joined now by member of the Mayoral Committee, or MMC, for Public Safety in the city of Johannesburg, Councillor Dr. Mgcini Chwaku. Councillor, thank you for joining us, and good morning to you.
Good morning, Madam, and good morning to the listeners of African Channel.
Channel Africa, thank you so
Channel
much.
Africa. Channel Africa.
A tragic event here last night, 6 people having been confirmed dead. Councillor, what is the latest on the death toll?
No, at this point in time, it's still, nothing has changed. 6 individuals confirmed dead, and then the 3 were still missing. There were some visuals last night that were seen just under the rubble. Some of those individuals, 2 of them, and but they could not continue because of the threat. Maybe the whole structure might collapse. So they stopped those searches last night, and then they have resumed now to actually move in so that they can recover the other individuals that are actually trapped underneath that rubble.
Is there any form of communication that's happening with those that are trapped underneath? And is 3 the confirmed number, that's all there is underneath?
Yes, no, there's 3 missing, but we managed to get the 2 visuals of the other individuals that are trapped, but there was no communication. I don't want to say that they're presumed dead, dead, but there was no communication last night. But we could see bodies, two of the 3 missing bodies under the rubble. So we'll confirm today because the
the search and rescue operation is actually has resumed now at 8 o'clock. The guys are on site already.
All right. What details have been revealed by preliminary investigations at this point in terms of what happened? Maybe, I don't know if autopsy reports have been done on the other 6.
No, the autopsy has not been done as yet, but what the preliminary investigation or when we went to site, we just saw that first that there were no building plans that were submitted to the city. And then secondly, the building that has been constructed next to the high voltage lines of actually ESCOM. And of course, during the course of on a detailed investigation, we'll have to look in terms of if there was a engineer's drawing, because when you're going to do a double-story building, you must submit your drawings to a structural engineer to sign it off. At this point in time, we don't think that they have those available. And looking at the pictures and also with some of the visuals that we've seen in there, is we don't think that the formwork is when you are going to pour, the slab, you need to ensure that there is enough scaffolding underneath. In other words, it must be propped properly, because if you don't do that, you run a risk of a cave in, what you said. And also, we're looking at the pictures, we don't see any reinforcement in the concrete, which is quite very weird. But of course, investigation must go in. We want to look at the health, if there was a safety person on site. We want to check if the risk assessment was done, if the safety plan was in place, and all those things. But to what preliminary investigations point in time, it looks like those chance takers, people, they just decided to build a warehouse without any approval of plans. They're just looking, they're like bogus builders who don't follow those, the approvals, the stages of the city. That's our preliminary investigation, and also qualitative investigation in terms of what could have actually gone wrong. But when we look at the pictures, and I was talking to the former MMC of Water and Sanitation, Thembi Msane, who is a qualified, the civil engineer, one of the things that she actually spotted was that it looks as if the forming, what I was telling you right now, propping, making sure that your reinforcement is in place and your formwork, it was actually quite poor. We don't think that there was a proper reinforcement, the proper propping of the concrete, so that when you are pouring the concrete on top of the reinforcement, you don't have a cave in. So yeah, there's quite a lot of things that have gone wrong there. So investigation will kickstart a detailed investigation with immediate effect once all the individuals have been accounted for.
Do you have confirmation on who this construction company is at this particular point, and also if the company was even registered itself? I know they did quite a number of bogus operations and did not adhere to what they needed to in terms of construction labor laws.
Look, with the owner of the building was on site yesterday, and the company, the construction company known to us, is actually taken in for questioning and all those things. So we're going to deep dive in terms of the whole compliance and all of that. It just happened very sudden yesterday. So at least now, today we'll have more chance to contact the NHBRC, contact the construction CETA and all the construction company to check if the company is not is actually registered. And indeed, I agree with you. Some of the companies, they actually bypass that process because they don't want to pay for the professional costs. And what normally happened in my previous life as a project engineer, because I'm a chemical engineer by profession, I used to be deployed at the Sasol site. One of the things that we've seen is that if you don't watch over the contractors and ensure that what they deliver on site is according to spec, what they normally do is that the engineer will do their own engineering drawing. In this case, if you are doing a slab, you do a finite analysis or you use Caesar to really simulate what will happen if you put weights on top of the concrete slab, and then it will spit out what strength of concrete you must use, what size of rebar or reinforcement you must use, and what type of formwork that you must put in place to ensure that when you are constructing the slab, it doesn't collapse. Some of these bogus companies, because they want to save money, they use a concrete with, if let's say Caesar or the finite modeling analysis will give you 20 or let's say 30 MPa strength of the concrete. Because they want to save money, they take 10. And then because they don't want to pay for reinforcement, the wire, that wire mesh, instead of using, let's say, 9 millimeters, they will use 5 millimeters. So that's why as engineers, as consultant engineers, we'll go on site. When these contractors are delivering, we have to look at the engineering drawing and look in terms what is delivered is what's in engineering drawing. We're going to also hold accountable the inspector, because we will check who's the inspector that was responsible for that, whether it's within the city or wherever, because at the stages of the construction, that's what you need to. You need to go out when they are putting formwork and they are putting their rebar or the reinforcement and wiring it up properly, putting their shutters around. That person must come out and check everything is proper and sign it off before you pour the concrete. So there are stages that will be investigated. And unfortunately, the person that will be held accountable, if I still remember well, during my engineering time, is what is called a 6.2, which is the executive or the director of the companies will be the one that will be held directly responsible and possible of going to jail. So that 6.2 will be invoked. And the person, not the people that were there on the ground, of course, those also will be held accountable, but the director of the company in itself will be held liable.
So this is also the second structure to collapse in the city since the beginning of the year, and we're only in March. Are you concerned, Councillor? We know there was an incident in the township of Soweto that killed 3 people in January.
Yeah, no. There is a concern of that. We, as the city, we went out. We did a lot of community outreach there to explain to our people the processes that they must follow when they are building when they start to build a house or when they are going to do renovations. So to your listeners out there, they're listening, before you do a renovation, before you can build, you must have a building plan. That's what we've been preaching all the time. And then if you're going to do an upstairs, it's a double story or triple story, you need to take those drawings to an engineer. There's when you submit your plans, your architectural plans, you will have engineers in the city that will explain to you what material you must use, how do you construct that building so that it doesn't collapse. So you have an instance where our people, they don't go to the municipality. They tell you that, I need a toilet here, or I need an upstairs, so, and with this whatever. Then they start drawing these bogus thing is the construction companies. Especially there are a lot of them in the townships, by the way. They will just do a quick sketch and they'll go to these hardware stores and get the material and start to really, to construct. Unfortunately, that the people, the owners of their house, will be held directly liable in terms of that they should have known better. And we've been delivering pamphlets. We've been on the news to tell our people, before you do any renovations, get those drawings, get them approved by us in the city. There are engineers that are really, they're qualified to actually do that, so that you don't have to be held liable at the end in case of danger and all of that. So we will intensify again, and tell our people they mustn't be irresponsible. I said last time that, and Alexandra, actually tomorrow I'm having a press conference. It's going to be held at the Alexandra Township. There are many double-story houses that need to be demolished because they did not follow the process of approval of drawings, approval by an engineer, inspectors coming in to do the quality assurance. So anything that can happen there as the city and the public safety, I can be held liable. So we are in the talks with the people of Alexander, and our people are very stubborn. It's going to be very difficult. Others, we've been sending engineers to go and check if maybe there can be reinforcements that can be done in those houses. They built double-story houses without approval of any drawings. When you look at these houses, some of them are close to the river, very, very close to the river. And then you're looking at the slab. There's actually literally a very thin slab that is there. So yeah. We've got some problems, but we've been going out to our people outreach. Every time, even the EMS when they are doing their outreach program on fire and buildings, we tell our people. Even JMPD, which is the Metro Police, through their outreach, their program. That's what they actually do. But we will do more. So our people, it's just. In the townships, the compliance of the bylaw, it's still difficult. They just lawlessness that is there. So we are turning the corner, but it is very, very difficult.
Right. And as you mentioned, I mean, in these townships, we know buildings for rental accommodation are seriously on the rise, with the example of Soweto and Alex that you give there. But I think, Councillor, you've outlined for us what the city plans to do in ensuring that building structures across the city are safe and they have the proper approved building plans. Interestingly, that we talk about this in the previous hour, we were speaking about the Decent Work in Construction project, which is also gathering here in Johannesburg to disseminate good practices and increased compliance within the construction sector. We appreciate your time very much. We're going to leave this conversation there.
Okay.
And we are appreciative of your insights.
Thank you very much, Madam.
Thank you. That was member of the Mayoral Committee, or MMC, for Public Safety in the city of Johannesburg here in South Africa, Councillor Dr. Mgcini Chwaku. It's now headlines time, news headlines that is. Let's get that from Jolane Tulongwepe. It's 8:30 Central African Time.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Making headlines, drones have attacked the airport serving Kisangani, a strategic city in the northeast of the Democratic Republic of Congo, far from active front lines in the east. The rescue operation at a collapsed building in Omonde in the south of Johannesburg in South Africa is resuming this morning after being abandoned late last night due to safety fears for the emergency workers. The incident has left 6 people dead and 2 were rescued and another one is in hospital. And finally, Israel has launched a fresh aerial assault on the Lebanese capital Beirut, targeting command centers and storage facilities belonging to Hezbollah. I will have details on these and other stories at 9 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's get our sports update now from Fikile Lingwadi.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Bet off with cricket news. South Africa head into tomorrow's 2020 World Cup semi-final against New Zealand at Eden Gardens as the tournament's only unbeaten side. But coach Shukri Conrad has warned against complacency. The Proteas, who beat the Black Caps in the group stage, have impressed with a powerful batting lineup and a varied bowling attack, earning the favourites' tag once held by the defending champions India. Since surviving a double super over against Afghanistan, Aiden Markram's team have maintained relentless momentum, with Quinton de Kock, Markram and Ryan Rickleton leading a top order capable of explosive starts, backed by a middle order offering little respite. India face England in the other semi-final on Thursday. On to rugby news. South Africa will not be hosting a Rugby World Cup in the foreseeable future. South Africa's rugby says that South Africa will never make enough money for the World Rugby to justify hosting a World Cup tournament in the Republic. This stark admission is based purely on economics. With that in mind, South Africa Rugby CEO Rian Obelhorza says it makes better business sense to establish the Springbok brand in markets that are able to host future World Cups. Obelhorza says it is now time to do what is in the best interest of world rugby.
I think we have moved away from that philosophy that everybody must get an equal chance to host a World Cup. New Zealand will not make the money out of a World Cup that a World Cup needs. South Africa will not make the money out of a World Cup that World Rugby needs. So I don't think it is a negative on us. It is more what is more important for the best interest of World Rugby.
With that in mind, South Africa believes it is better to establish the Springbok brand in the USA and become the go-to team for American supporters unfamiliar with rugby.
For us as SA Rugby, to keep on creating financial stability for us, we have to start looking at taking our brand wider than just South Africa. And we know about the support that we have in London, for example, and you all saw when we play there the massive South African support we have. America is a very important market for us in the run-up to 31 World Cup, as you said. We want to establish ourselves there as a team that is known to the majority of the Americans that will support the game.
On to athletics, Kenya's National Anti-Doping Body, ADAC, says disgraced Kenyan marathon runner Rita Jepto, National 400-meter hurdles champion Wiseman Were, and 25 other athletes have been provisionally suspended for doping violations. Jepto, a former Boston and Chicago marathon winner, was banned for 4 years in 2014 after testing positive for a banned substance and only returned to racing 3 years ago. She has now been suspended again following a test that found the presence of prohibited anabolic androgenic steroids. She will remain suspended until her hearing, but ADAC did not say when that would take place. The list also includes football and basketball players who have been provisionally suspended for varying doping offences. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fidel Nwadi.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Africa. It's time to plug into the heartbeat of the continent. Tune in to Channel Africa, your go-to radio station that broadcasts in 5 different languages.
L'Afrique du Sud célèbre la journée nationale du
Kabla hujaitwa kwa jina la Double K
or more of our forests have been destroyed.
Partido Africano da Independência da Guiné.
Channel Africa represents every corner of this amazing land. From Lagos to Cape Town, Nairobi to Dakar, we've got you covered with the freshest news, music, and cultures. So, turn up the volume, feel the rhythm. Enjoy the conversation. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Hi there. Do you want to elevate your business and give it a voice in South Africa and Africa as a whole? Well, in that case, let Channel Africa make this a possibility. Channel Africa is willing to advertise your business for as little as 30,000 rands or $1,719.18. To get access to these great rates, send all requests to mukwenata@SABC. That's MOKOENATA@SABC. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Let's catch you up with what's happening in the world of economics. We say good morning to Tabiso Lehoko for our business news.
Business news on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and good morning. The chairperson of South Africa's
Parliament's Standing Committee on Public Accounts, Sonyezo Zibi, says it is important that government undertakes a skills review. He was taking part in the regular media briefing where various chairpersons of Parliament briefed the media and stakeholders. During the briefing by the chairpersons representing the finance cluster, Zibi said state money was wasted on $100,000 projects because appropriately skilled people were not appointed. He says while the ghost worker audit by government is welcomed, it needs to be determined what skills are available in the state.
Much of this is caused by the employment of unsuitable people to critical management and executive positions. I am not happy that the government is just hunting for ghost workers, which is very important. What we additionally need is a skills review and audit to be prepared to redeploy or eject people who are either non-performing or underqualified.
The South African Department of Employment and Labour has urged the construction companies to prioritise hiring South Africans. The call comes after the department's raid at 2 construction sites in Clayville, Ekurhuleni last week, where 50 undocumented foreign nationals were arrested. The multidisciplinary operation targeted non-compliant construction companies. The department's Deputy Minister, Jomo Sibiya, has warned employers that hiring undocumented individuals will result in serious consequences, including fines and possible imprisonment.
We are trying to protect our country, we are protecting our people, but we are saying to employers, prioritize South Africans. Let's employ our people. We do have skills and we have a high level of unemployment in our country.
South Africa's Nedbank Group has posted a 2% rise in full-year headline earnings, driven by an improvement in an impairment charge, while revenue growth was slow. For the year ended on the 31st, the bank's headline earnings grew to $1.07 billion from $1,060,861 a year earlier. The lender reported that its impairment charge declined 18% to $408,500,000, citing de-risking strategies and improved quality in the front book origination as key factors supporting the reduction. The main corridor for the Democratic Republic of Congo's copper, cobalt and other mineral exports is expected to reopen today after road damage halted flows. Congo is Africa's largest copper producer and the world's second largest copper producer by output. It is also the world's dominant cobalt supplier, producing over 70% of global cobalt output and exporting the bulk of it alongside other key battery minerals. The yen and the euro were broadly lower as the widening Middle East conflict focused attention on countries dependent on energy imports and how central banks may reopen to inflation pressures. The dollar benefited from safe haven demand as the US and Israeli air war against Iran spilled out into neighboring countries. The euro steadied after sliding more than 1% as doubts swirled about when oil shipments from the region will be restored. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 364. In Botswana, it's at 13.7. Kenya, 128 shilling 89. In Zambia, 18 kwacha 98. The BRICS countries, Brazil, the dollar, 5 real 15. Russia, 77 rubles 165. India, 91 rupees 48. China, 61.88. And in South Africa, the dollar will cost you 16 rand 8 cents. 74 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Commodities markets. Gold is trading at $5,366, while platinum is at $2,298 per ounce. Brent crude oil is at $79.33 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tebisolo Hogo.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. 6 decades strong, Channel Africa continues to inspire Africa and the world, proudly sharing
the African perspective.
Former South Africa's National Director of Public Prosecutions, NDPP advocate Bulelani Ngcuka, says he was never subjected to political interference with regards to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission cases during his tenure. Ngcuka, who testified on the 11th day of the TRC cases inquiry public hearings, was Democratic South Africa's first NDPP and held office from 1998 to 2004. Ngcuka has put the lack of many prosecutions down to lack of evidence, given the historic nature of many of the cases, as well as limited resources in the then new NPA. Busi Bopela reports.
Advocate Bulelani Ngcuka says he was committed to taking forward the investigation and prosecution of the TRC cases due to his own history. Ngcuka had served articles at the offices of anti-apartheid lawyer Griffith Mxenge before the latter's assassination by the security branch in 1981, spent 8 months in solitary confinement, and was jailed for 3 years in 1982 for refusing to give evidence in the case of another comrade. Ngcuka says even if there had been an attempt to interfere with his work, he would have resisted it.
This thing about political interference, it would happen if you allow it. If you allow it as national director, then of course there will be. But at the end of the day, is what I've been saying is the decision is yours and yours alone. And you tell people, no, this is not how this is going to work. I mean, I can give you a number of examples about a number of other cases where people have tried to persuade me not to take action, sending lawyers, advocates, making
would those be
representations.
non-TRC related cases?
Yes. But I was able to rebuff all those attempts and say no. So it never happened during my time. If it had happened, I would have been able to say no, sorry, it's not going to happen.
He says what often lay at the heart of the failure to prosecute the TRC cases was the fact that, due to their nature, there was not enough evidence to secure a conviction.
You take the Biko case. In that case, we realized that we did not have sufficient evidence to get a conviction. We all knew that the police had killed Steve. We knew that. And so, to go and take those police to court when we didn't have sufficient evidence, they would have been acquitted. And we would have ended up with egg on our faces. To go and prosecute a case that you know you're going to lose. The evidence was just not enough for us to do that.
Adding to the challenges were the teething pains associated with the setting up of a new authority, exacerbated by competition for limited resources. Ngcuka speaking to his lawyer and evidence leader Rafik Bana.
We probably had roughly about 300, between 300 and 350 investigators, about 55 lawyers, somewhere there, 50, 55, and about 30 or so analysts, and about 5 or so accountants. So that was the number.
And
there were very few.
Yes, can you give the Commission, I mean, that's an abstract number, but rooting it with what was happening on the ground, how thinly were those investigators spread, those 320?
Very thinly.
Ngcuka is due to return to the inquiry in approximately 2 weeks' time, after his lawyer unsuccessfully argued that due to the fact that Ngcuka had not implicated anyone in his statement, there was no need for cross-examination. Public hearings continue on Tuesday.
That's a report by Busi Bopela. A regional knowledge-sharing event on decent work in the construction sector has heard that in South Africa, a construction worker dies every week. Jens Dreying Christensen, Senior Enterprise Development Specialist at the International Labour Organization, says the sector is deeply fragile for many workers. He says work is temporary, high risk, low paid, and very often work is too informal. Tlantla Mahlangu has more.
The rapidly growing urban development and increased infrastructure demand has led to a boom in construction across Southern Africa. This has brought with it many business and job opportunities at all occupational levels in the construction sector. The sector is characterized by poor labor rights adherence, decent work deficits, with more severe and fatal workplace accidents rates and low labor productivity. The Decent Work in Construction project, implemented by the International Labour Organization in collaboration with the SADC Secretariat with the support of Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency, is a response to these challenges and to the increasing demand for infrastructure in Southern Africa. The project seeks to contribute towards increased compliance with labour rights and to enhance labour productivity in the SADC construction sector. Jens Drying Christensen, Senior Enterprise Development Specialist at the ILO, says the pursuit of decent work in construction is not only a moral imperative for the SADC region, but is an economic necessity.
Unsafe, informal, precarious construction does not build competitive and sustainable and resilient economies, but safer, skilled, accountable construction creates resilient enterprises, and resilient enterprises build resilient societies. So I want to argue that the real foundation of our cities, those beautiful cities that are coming up across the SADC region, it's not steel, it's not cement, it is the responsible enterprise, it is the worker in that enterprise, and every procurement decision, every contract, every enforcement action, every training program determines whether we build risk or resilience and productivity.
Agnes Moilwa, Deputy Director General of the South African Department of Labour and Chairperson of the Project Steering Committee, says decent work should be a lived reality.
It's a pity that not all employers see it that way. Because I believe that you lose nothing when you treat people in a humane way. That shows that you not only view them as machinery that helps you to amass wealth, but you see them as partners that are able to build. And you know, the construction sector is something to lo and behold. Literally, you can see a before and after picture where there was just once just dust. You see buildings, state-of-the-art buildings. And I believe that we need to begin to appreciate men and women that engage in these back-breaking exercises. So it is a sweat, tears, hard work of vulnerable workers, sometimes underpaid.
The construction sector continues to see an increase of women-owned businesses. Neo Kobala from DSM Construction and Supplies is from one of them.
The reason that I started operating in the construction sector is because I saw a gap that I felt it needed to be filled by them, which it was very difficult at the beginning. But as I go along, I learned a lot and managed to be where I am today. And being part of the program, Decent Work, it helped me in many ways, whereby I managed to implement few items that aligned with the company in terms of production.
The event, attended by more than 110 delegates from across SADC, is expected to strengthen the capacities to roll out practical approaches and tools for promoting decent work and labor productivity, and for incentivizing labor law compliance in small workplaces that can be applied at sectoral level, and opportunities for collaboration and decent work community building. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Dlandla Mahlangu in Johannesburg.
All right, as we wrap up Rise and Shine, we throw forward to what's coming next on Channel Africa, and that is On the Move, that show hosted by Palesa Tau and Benjamin Mushatama. So Palesa joining us in studio now to tell us what to expect on this Tuesday.
Good morning. Doing good. Well, today on the Move, we're going to start with, of course, it's breaking news all over the world, what's happening in Iran. But there's also a lot of issues taking place in the Middle East as a whole. And And there's a lot of people, Africans, stranded in places like Dubai who've been going on social media saying, hey, we actually can't go anywhere. I was on holiday, or I, live here, or I work here, and I can't go home because the airports are closed. So we're looking at what it practically means to be stranded abroad in any kind of situation. Of course, this being the one that we're faced with now. Emma Bashford, who's an immigration expert, will be joining us in that conversation. And in the cubicle today, we'll be speaking about your transition back to work as a new mother, but also how workplace culture and performance expectations may sometimes sideline new mothers within the workplace.
Okay, interesting topics there. There's quite a lot of South Africans in Dubai. I think it's
Yes.
second to the UK.
Yeah.
In terms of how many of our people are there. So
True.
that one
And
will
South
be
Africans
important
always
to-
love to joke. Like, I've been seeing them going on social media laughing. I'm like, even in moments of crises, we're always going to joke
What are the
about
jokes?
something.
What are they saying?
Just making, fun of the fact that they're stuck in a different country and they want to go home. Just being very comical about it. But it is still quite a serious issue.
Yeah, it is. And then the motherhood one, mom's getting back to work. Hey, that one is tough. It's
It
not
is.
easy.
Yeah.
Don't know how you can work around that, but there are always ways. Okay, thank you so much for that snippet. That's On the Move, coming up on Channel Africa. First with the African story globally.
Africa, voici Abedi.
Oui, c'est moi.
Abedi est un passionné de musique dans l'âme. Il a un goût pour toutes sortes de musique et passe ses journées à écouter Channel Africa.
J'aime beaucoup la musique africaine.
Ok. Devinez quoi? Channel Africa veut aider Abedi et les mélomanes du monde entier à découvrir encore plus de musique incroyable. C'est pourquoi Channel Africa appelle les artistes africains à soumettre leur musique. Chers artistes, n'oubliez pas de nous fournir toutes vos informations pertinentes à l'email adresse musique@channelafrica.co.za. Les soumissions sont votre chance d'être entendues, mais elles ne garantissent pas une playlist. Toutes les soumissions seront soigneusement examinées pour voir si elles répondent aux exigences de notre station. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Across Africa, communities rise with the promise of clean water and clean sanitation. The African Union's 2026 theme calls us to action.
It's about mobilizing real commitments, securing climate-resilient water and sanitation projects, and ensuring that water becomes a driver of sustainable development and prosperity across the continent.
A landmark moment, not only for Africa, but for the global movement for access to safe water for all.
Assuring sustainable water availability for every home, every village, every nation. This is the Africa we want.
Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
As we were talking now with Palesa, now throw forward to On the Move, South Africans living in the United Arab Emirates say they are scared, nervous and unsure of what will happen next. This amid fears of a wider regional conflict following the United States and Israeli attacks on Iran and its retaliation. As the conflict continues, many South Africans living and working in the UAE say they are stressed and worried. Mlamli Manedi has more.
Cameron van Niekerk, a South African working as a teacher in Dubai, says he's been in the country for 3 years and has never been so scared and experienced anything like this.
I'm very stressed, I'm confused, I don't know what to do. Obviously, kind of sitting and waiting for the authorities to give us the go-ahead on what and how we're going to go about these things. But knowing that bombs and missiles and things are going off around us and you never know where they can hit next, that confusion, I can't describe it. I've never been in this situation even in my life, and to be honest, I'm very scared. I'm nervous.
At Cape Town International Airport, a handful of travelers such as German tourist Dietmar Witt have expressed frustration about the impact of cancelled flights and what they call a lack of communication from their airlines.
I just can't speak for myself. And for myself, the situation is unbelievable because nobody helped us. That's the problem. Yeah, normally we have rights. They have to bring us home. Yeah, they can book us to another airline, something like that. But they don't do nothing. We just get this piece of paper with a telephone number that don't work.
Mother of two and a wife, Emerin Chanel, says she's been living in the UAE for the past 11 years and had to come to South Africa with a friend from the UK for a short holiday, and now she cannot go back to her family due to the current situation.
We hope that the US and Israel back down, because we all believe more that that is where the trouble is coming from. Although we do not support the Iranian regime in any shape, form or size, we do feel that, the reasons why the US is barging in there seem to me fairly vague. It'd be great if they can back off and leave the region to itself, I think.
Ordinary Cape Townians have shared their thoughts about the attacks on Iran by the USA and Israel, as well as Iran's retaliation.
The economy of the world is going to be affected by this war that is happening right now in the Middle East. For me to say, my view is this: there should be no war now in the Middle East. And the only thing the world that needs is the peace. They must just leave Iran alone. They can't change the regime in Iran.
But for now, the immediate focus is on assisting visitors affected by flights disrupted. Meanwhile, Cape Town Tourism says they are closely monitoring the situation. Cape Town Tourism CEO, Enver Dumini.
Our teams are on the ground at the airport working alongside AXA and airline partners to assist passengers with information, rebookings and guidance. We strongly encourage travellers to check directly with the airlines before heading to the airport. While it's still early to assess the full impact, Cape Town's tourism sector is resilient and the city remains fully open, safe and ready to welcome visitors.
But for now, the immediate focus is on assisting visitors affected by flight disruptions. I'm Lamde Maneli in Cape Town.
Yeah, so we wrap up Rise and Shine here on Channel Africa, but do stay tuned because there's more programming coming throughout the course of the day. We'll be back as the Rise and Shine team with you tomorrow, bright and early at 6 a.m. Central African time. Quite a number of stories we touched on today. They seem to be around business and economics, I guess. But yeah, we'll be bringing you for the 3 hours of news and current affairs programming in and around our continent again tomorrow. My name is Asanda Beda. It's goodbye from us, from me and the team. Have a great day.
Conversations are happening, and Channel Africa is at the heart of them. We tell the African story with clarity, pride, and purpose, reaching audiences that matter to your brand. Partner with us and connect your business with listeners.